Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 27th regular business board meeting of the Lower Merion School District. I'm Melissa Gilbert. I'm president of the Lower Merion Board of School Directors. Before we begin the official agenda for tonight's meeting, our board and Superintendent Copeland would like to take a moment to recognize the passing of one of our district's most acclaimed alumni, 1996 Lower Merion High School graduate, Kobe Bryant. As I'm sure you all know, Mr. Bryant, his daughter, and 7 others were killed in a helicopter crash in California just yesterday. Mr. Bryant joined the NBA after winning a state championship as a Lower Merion ace. As his fame grew, Lower Merion became known throughout the world as his alma mater. During his career, he regularly returned to our district to support our student athletes, for which we, as a school community, are grateful. Our students and staff join Mr. Bryant's friends and fans all over the world in extending our deepest condolences to his family and to the families of all of the victims. We'd like to observe 33 seconds of silence in honor of the number 33, which Mr. Bryant wore as a Lower Merion basketball ace. Thank you. Thank you. At this time, we will start the remainder of our meeting, and I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Copeland.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Our first presentation this evening is from the Penguin Elementary School. Mr. Bernardowitz, principal, is here with members of his school family to talk about their school families. Mr. Bernardowitz.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board, and thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit about our Penguin Colonies initiative. When I welcome families to Penguin, I share with them that as a school in Lower Merion School District, we aspire to support their child as they enter to learn and go forth to serve. I share with them that their child is becoming not just part of a school, but the wider Penguin community. This is a community of learners, a community of friends, a community of caring individuals. This year, we established a goal to strengthen the sense of community by creating what we refer to as Penguin Colonies. We are the proud Penguins of Penguin Elementary. I would like to introduce Gonzague Luke, who will share a little bit of information about our beloved mascot.
In the wild, penguins live in colonies. They stick together, they take care of one another. Penguins return to the colony year after year. Penguins huddle for warm in a cold area where they live.
Thank you, Gonzague. In creating our Penguin Colonies, we are striving to establish small communities that will stay together over time to promote relationships between students across grades and with an adult mentor in the building. Like penguins in the wild, we want our colonies to stay together over time and provide a warm environment for all of our kids. Tonight, I am happy to have student and faculty representatives who will share more information about this initiative. Ms. Nicole Iezzi is one of our highly regarded instructional assistants who will speak about the logistics of how school colonies are formed and how they function.
Thank you, Mr. B. Once enrolled, all 1st through 5th grade students are assigned a school colony leader. We consider the individual needs of our 1st through 5th grade students when selecting which adult is most appropriate to lead a particular student. We currently have a total of 55 colonies with approximately 12 to 13 1st through 5th grade students in each colony. All kindergarten students participate in the school colony lessons with their homeroom teacher and classmates. Rising kindergarten students will be added to a colony when they start 1st grade. With the goal of building relationships in mind, we have tried to keep school colonies as small as possible, and in doing so, all available adults in the building as colony leaders. This includes, but not limited to, our head custodian, instructional assistants, special area teachers, administrative assistants, special education teachers, counselors, and principals. Now Nina Apple, one of our current 5th graders, will tell us about the special leadership role that all 5th graders have taken on with our school colony initiative.
All 5th grade students have taken on a leadership role within their school colony to help things function smoothly. 5th grade students help in a variety of ways. For example, all 5th grade students have been assigned at least one 1st grade buddy. 5th grade students are responsible for picking up their 1st grade buddy from their homeroom class and bringing their 1st grade buddy back to their homeroom class at the conclusion of the school colony meeting. With 700 kids all moving simultaneously, our 5th graders have been integral to the safe facilitation of this undertaking. In addition to assisting their 1st grade buddies with travel, all 5th grade students help bring needed supplies. During lessons, 5th grade students also help some of the younger students complete the colony activities. Thus far this school year, we've held 3 school colony meetings. Now a few of our 5th graders will tell you about our school colony meetings. First up is Ahmed Barish, who will share about our first school colony meeting.
The theme of our first meeting was family diversity. When we first gathered, we introduced ourselves and shared about something we liked and something that was interesting about ourselves or our family. We then discussed the definition of a family, a group of people going through the world together, often adults and the children they care for. We talked about how some families are different. Families are made up of different compositions. They have different traditions and holidays. We shared about what makes our family special or unique and talked about how having different kinds of families make the world and our school community a better place. School colonies are school families that include staff and children from different grade levels. We took a school colony picture and created a picture frame with words or phrases that could be used to describe our school colony. Our picture frames and school colony pictures were later hung in the hallway by the main office. Next, Talia Desi, another 5th grade student, will share about our second school colony meeting.
The theme of our second school colony meeting was a colony that plays together, stays together. At the start of our second colony meeting, we all reintroduced ourselves to the group and shared the name of our favorite game. Mine is Uno. We then discussed how playing games together makes relationships stronger, and we learned that we would spend our time together playing Uno. We reviewed the rules of Uno as a group and paired up into teams with younger students and older students working together. We discussed how we could make others feel good when we were competing with them and how we could show good sportsmanship at the end of the game. And then we just played. Now, Christian Cook, another 5th grade student, will share about our third school colony meeting.
The theme of our third school colony meeting was diversity is strength. At the start of our meeting, we all said our names and shared about something that makes us special, unique, or different. We then discussed what it would be like if everyone was the same, and we added that if everyone was the same, the world would be a pretty boring place. Our colony leaders then drew stick figures. We brainstormed some of the ways people are different from each other. We came up with things like people have different height, shoe sizes, skin colors, hair colors and textures, interests, genders, religions, family structures, food preferences, personalities, styles of dress, and accents. We then discussed how all of these ideas are an important part of our individual identity. After that, we did an art project to highlight some of the ways we are different. Our school colony explained that we would be making snowflakes and talked to us about how no two snowflakes are the same. We then folded paper, cut out our designs, and unfolded our unique creations. We wrote words or drew pictures on our snowflakes to represent some of the unique aspects of our identity. The snowflakes we created will be hung throughout the building to remind us that we are all unique and that we need to honor and respect others' differences. Now, a few Penguin second graders will share what they love about school colonies. First will be Cecilia Burris.
I really like my colony leader, Mr. Hale. Mr. Hale is our head custodian and he's always making everyone laugh. Mr. Hale is all about having fun. Our colony meets in the cafeteria, and once we hid behind the curtains on the stage and tricked Mr. Hale. He didn't know where we were. I also like how everyone in my colony tries to be fair and make the colony great for everyone. We all share supplies and help each other. It's also cool how our colony is made up of kids from all different grades. It is fun to be together and get to experience being with older and younger students. Next, Gemma Talarigo, another second grade student, will share about what she likes about school colonies.
Miss Cummings is a second grade teacher at Penwood, and she's my colony leader. I like being in her colony because she knows my family and some of my friends. I feel like Miss Cummings really knows me because she knows some of the people that I am close with. I like the activities we do together as a colony. I enjoy playing Uno with my colony. I normally only get to play Uno with my brother and my mom, but it was fun to play with a lot of people at once. I also really liked making snowflakes with my colony. I love art. It is fun to create things. Next, Matthew Sherman, another second grade student, will share about what he likes about school colonies.
My name is Matthew Donner Sherman, and I am in Mr. B's colony. I think it's cool to have people of all different genders, races, and grades in my colony, as well as the principal of Penwood. I like colonies because we get to hang out with new friends while learning great lessons. I loved making snowflakes a couple weeks ago during a Martin Luther King Jr. lesson, where we learned about being unique and different. I also like that we meet in Mr. B's office because I got to know him better and found out that when he is on the loudspeaker, he's actually talking to something that looks like a phone and not a microphone. And now I would like to introduce Penwood's assistant principal, Ms. Partridge, to close her presentation.
As you can see, Penwood's adoption of school colonies allows us to continue to develop the important network of relationships that support and sustain a positive learning environment that is essential for academic success. We thank you.
So I'd like to thank all of our amazing students and teacher and Mrs. Partridge and Mr. B for joining us and talking to us about all the great things that are going on at Penwood Elementary School. It's really great to see you all here tonight. It's always exciting to hear from the students particularly, so thank you so much. And can we have another round of applause for those brave students?
Okay, thank you. We have one more presentation. Our presentation now is an update on the proposed school schedules and school start time. We indicated that the end of January would be our opportunity to share with the board and the public updated information that we got through emails, through listening sessions, and just conversations throughout the community. One of the things that we have also collected through our Hanover is all of the emails that we've gotten to a certain point have been brought together and been codified into a document, and by tomorrow we'll have that ready for you on our website, and I'll make sure everybody knows about that. But for this evening, we have again Dr. Christina Paul and Dr. Catherine Blackburn, who are going to give us our update. So I think Dr. Paul is up first.
Good evening, everyone. We are here to give the Board of School Directors an update on the information that we've learned and gathered since the presentation of a proposal for new school schedules starting as soon as fall 2020. For those in the audience who would like some more background information on that presentation and all of the work that has gone into leading up to that presentation, we would encourage you to visit lmsd.org/sleep, where all past presentations and materials have been posted, and to dig even deeper into much of the research, the information that's been gathered, the reports that have been generated through multiple projects to assess feasibility of this of new school schedules. We would encourage you to dig a little deeper into that second link on the slide, which is also linked to the lmsd.org/sleep website. So to provide some context, back in October of 2019, an initial proposal was presented to the Board of School Directors, which included the schedules that you see here on the screen. In this proposal, the elementary school day would begin at 7:45 and dismiss at 2:35. Our high schools would begin at 8:25 a.m. and conclude at 3:25 p.m. And our middle schools would be in the last position, starting at 9:05 and ending at 4:05. The kindergarten times can be seen there below the middle school schedule. The half-day kindergarten times would be extended to 3 hours for the AM and 3 hours for the PM. The AM kindergarten would end at 10:45, and the PM kindergarten would begin at 11:35. For those who would like more extensive information on how this proposal was generated and developed, we would encourage you to go back and review the materials from the October presentation. Tonight, we're not going to spend time going into the background on how the proposal was developed, but rather spend our time updating the board and the community on the information we've gathered since the presentation in October. So over the past several months, we've collected a variety of feedback from a variety of people in a variety of modes and methods. Some of the ways that we've collected written feedback include emails that have been sent to sleep@lmsd.org, as well as those sent to community comments at lmsd.org. To date, we've received at least 350. I think we got 25 or 30 more today, so it's a very active email inbox that we are monitoring. And as Mr. Copeland described, the emails that were received up through December 20th of last year were sent to Hanover Research, our research partner, and they conducted a very systematic and thorough analysis of the themes that emerged from the emails received through December 20. Obviously, since then, we've received a number of hundreds more emails, and so we will be able to extend that methodological framework to the additional emails that have been received since December 20. We've also collected staff feedback through forms that have been submitted at the end of staff listening sessions. We've collected student feedback through the surveys that have been organized by our high school leaders, student leaders who were involved in listening sessions with their principals, then extended those same questions to their student body through a survey, which they then shared with us. Lots of qualitative information to dive into there. We've received a total of 690 responses across both high schools. We've also received a variety of letters, petitions, independent surveys from different groups that were previously organized or that have organized since the proposal was presented in October. Verbally, for verbal feedback, we've conducted a series of community listening sessions, many of whom I recognize familiar faces in the crowd. Many of you were at some of those community listening sessions in December. It totaled 8 hours of listening, and we estimate that between 180 and 200 community members came out and spoke at those different listening sessions. We also listened in on conversations at each of our buildings. Now, we plan to do a listening session at each of our school buildings, but so far have only been able to complete 7. Those 7 listening sessions with staff represent both high schools, both middle schools, and 3 of our 6 elementary schools. We've also conducted student listening sessions. The principals and the student councils of middle school and high schools conducted a series of listening sessions as well. And so that information was collated into notes and submitted. And we've also received lots of public comment at the various board meetings since October 24th, as well as our very first somewhat of a listening session. It wasn't framed that way initially, but it became a listening session, and that was the Interschool Council's Hot Topic meeting held on November 19th. So represents a lot of robust feedback and we've heard from many in our community, many of our staff, many of our students, many of our parents. We've also taken quite a bit of action regarding some of the logistical pieces of the proposal, and so I wanted to give you an overview of those actions that have taken place since October. A request for proposals has been issued for contracting new bus services. We've introduced new recruitment methods for bus drivers and have introduced new training incentives for those who are interested in our bus driving positions but who may not have a CDL license yet. We've explored new partnerships to enhance transportation efficiencies. We've discussed possibilities for new athletic schedules with the Central Athletic League. We've also taken steps to secure lighting for the athletic fields and for new parking spaces for our buses. And we've engaged internal staff in a risk analysis with Trago Ed, which will be the bulk of the presentation this evening. Finally, we've also coordinated several educational opportunities to address sleep, health, and wellness. We've extended invitations for a guest speaker to provide a community lecture and a Q&A around the science of sleep. Wanted to make note that originally we had planned to host Dr. Judy Owens on January 21st, and unfortunately she was unable to, she had a conflict that came up and was unable to commit to another date for this academic year, so we're pursuing other speakers instead. And then finally, as part of our long-standing work around student wellness that really stemmed from the All Forward strategic plan and has come to fruition through some of the work that we've done with Challenge Success out of Stanford University, we were able to partner with Challenge Success to bring the topic of the well-balanced student to our community. There will be a family presentation on February 2nd, and then we will be hosting workshops with each of the staff of the middle schools and high schools, focusing on the same topics. And the folks at Challenge Success, when I described the work that we were doing around health and wellness, and specifically around this task of examining our school schedules, they recommended this as a very appropriate workshop for our community because it does address the issues around sleep, but it also addresses a lot of the other issues that we have been talking about in the listening sessions. issues around homework, issues around extracurricular activities, about choosing academic load. So a lot of these topics that have come up throughout the listening sessions surrounding this particular topic will be embedded within those workshops for both families and for the faculty at the secondary schools. So the objectives for tonight's presentation are to first share some of the findings that we've gathered through all of these various forms of information gathering. Secondly, we'd like to share some early results of the risk analysis work that has begun with Trago Ed. It is not finished, but we have started that risk analysis process, and we'd like to share with you some of those results. And finally, to provide some recommendations for next steps. So generally speaking, when we look across all of the different forms of feedback that we've received from all of the groups within our community, generally speaking, it's safe to say that the community understands the scientific reasoning for later start times for adolescents. And regardless of the position that people have taken on this particular proposal, most would say, I support the idea of starting school later for our secondary students. Many students, educators, and members of our public have also expressed their belief that even with ideal start and end times for adolescents, there are other factors that are likely to disrupt sleep for our adolescent students. Some of the hot topics that have been discussed include the demands of homework, the extracurricular commitments that are connected with the school, plus those that are connected with community-based organizations, as well as personal choices to delay bedtimes to engage in other activities. A lot of student feedback has centered around other choices that students are making instead of going to bed at an appropriate time. And so that is a concern that has been expressed throughout many of these listening sessions and through many of the forms of written feedback. Regarding this particular proposal, we would have to say that there is considerable opposition to this particular proposal. As I said, even those who are opposed to this proposal will say we support the concept of starting school later for adolescent students. However, the opposition has really focused around three kind of structural aspects of this particular plan. The first is the elementary school day beginning at 7:45 a.m. The second structural element is having elementary school start and end their day prior to middle and high school. And the third is the middle school dismissal time primarily, but also the high school dismissal time. That is 60 minutes later for middle school and 45 minutes later for high school than it is currently. So I'm going to go into more specificity around the topics that have been discussed around each of these structural aspects of the proposal. So first, to start with that elementary school time of 7:45, if that start time were to be implemented, it would shift bedtimes earlier into the evening by 1 hour and 15 minutes. And the things that we have heard from families are that this will interfere with the family time that they have together in the evening. Many of our working parents are not able to get home until 6 or 7 p.m. at night or later, and so they are expressing their concern around the limited options to be together as a family in the evening if students have to go to sleep so much earlier in the evening under the schedule. Secondly, there are concerns about time for extracurricular activities. Once parents get home and start shuffling kids around to their extracurriculars, there's concerns around that. There are also concerns about opportunities for the elementary students to get the recommended amount of sleep. Particularly, people have pointed out that during certain times of the academic year, the sun would be setting after the appropriate bedtime for these students, which would make it very challenging to get to bed at the right time. So these are some of the primary topics. It's not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the top themes that have come out of our input gathering. Secondly, if we were to start elementary school at 7:45, it would result in elementary students traveling to school during times of limited visibility for portions of the calendar year. So many of the families and staff members have expressed their concern around the safety of students who would be waiting for the school bus or walking by foot to their schools during times of civil twilight, which is the half hour before sunrise, when there is still some ambient light in the atmosphere. So from a transportation perspective, there is school transportation logistics will examine this idea of civil twilight as a time when they're still able to safely pick up or drop off students without the need for artificial light. So there are concerns that even during that time of civil twilight, students' safety may be compromised. This 7:45 a.m. would also result in a very early wake-up time for elementary students, and we've heard from a number of families who are concerned that these early wake times would lead to negative health outcomes for the elementary students. I've often heard the phrase, we're shifting the problem to elementary. And so these concerns are around the idea that students may not be able to get the sleep that they need and still wake up early enough to get to school on time for a 7:45 a.m. start, especially for little kids who are harder to rush along in the morning. Some have expressed their concern around perhaps missed breakfast and the idea that students may have nutritional deficits as a result of this early wake time and rushing to get to school. The 7:45 a.m. would also be misaligned with area preschools, pre-Ks, and independent kindergartens that our families are using for those early childhood services. And some families have expressed concerns that these young children who are transitioning from those programs that typically start around 9 a.m. in our area, and then they're starting with our elementary schools, would have a dramatic shift in the start of their school day, and they're worried about those transitions. We've also heard from a number of people who are young families with several young children who have expressed concerns around juggling the logistics of multiple school schedules for their young children that for Lower Merion would start at 7:45, but for a lot of the other programs they're using would start at 9 o'clock. Another topic that we've heard regarding the 7:45 is that it would yield a kindergarten schedule that would end at 10:45 in the morning, and for afternoon students it would begin at 11:35. And we've heard from working parents who've shared that they would be very challenged with that half-day schedule that is very different from what their current working schedules are. We've also heard from parents who are concerned that, particularly the students who are in the afternoon program, that it would really be disruptive to their eating habits and having a lunchtime, a lunch before they get on the bus to go to school for an 11:35 a.m. start. The AM start for elementary would also limit the opportunities for meetings and activities that currently occur before the elementary school day begins. Currently, those meetings are held between 8 and 9 o'clock. So staff members have shared their concerns that if the IEP, the GIEP, the other parent meetings that are typically held at that 8 o'clock hour, if they continue to be held at that 8 o'clock hour, that now those teachers would need substitute coverage for their classes, and they would have to be away from their own classrooms for that critical early part of the school day. So there have been concerns about just missing out on that early instructional time with their students, but also the substitute coverage and whether or not we would have adequate substitutes at the building level. And then our music program, as we've heard from our music teachers and those students who participate in music programs, and they're concerned that if they were to have to move their practices and their lessons to after school, that it may prevent students from being able to participate, because that afternoon transportation would be much harder for working parents to accommodate than it may be now at the 8 o'clock hour. Another issue with the 7:45 a.m. start is that it would present challenges for elementary staff who have personal childcare arrangements back in their home districts. A number of them have shared their concerns that, that they have a long commute time, and if they needed to get to school at such a time that their students were starting instruction at 7:45, that they would have to leave their home schools before the 7 o'clock hour, and many of their child care providers are not even open at that point in time. So for them to be able to drop their own kids off in time to travel to Lower Merion to be at school on time for elementary school would be very problematic for a number of our staff members. And this is a caveat on this one, is that it's true that our high school staff currently deal with this issue. However, our high school start time that's currently 7:30 a.m., it doesn't require as much teacher supervision in that morning before 7:30. So teachers can arrive a little closer to that 7:30 start time, and the kids are there and they're ready to go. But with elementary schools, there's often that cushion of time that's needed prior to these actual start times, so that children are properly supervised and teachers are ready to welcome them. So finally, the elementary day that, I'm sorry, not finally, I'm moving on to a new structural issue here. This is the structural issue around having elementary in the first tier of a 3-tier system. So if the elementary day begins and ends before the middle and high school, then it eliminates the availability for older students to provide supervision to the younger students in the afternoon when they arrive home from school. Now, this is an issue that we've talked about throughout this entire process, but this is just to reiterate that we have in fact heard from our community, and they've expressed concerns around this issue. Some have expressed concerns that they may not be able to make alternative arrangements, and so they're concerned that children may become quote-unquote latchkey kids. Others have said that some of the students that we've heard from have actually said that with this switch in schedule, they may be now responsible for helping their younger siblings get ready for school in the morning to get on the bus at perhaps 7 a.m. So it therefore would negate their opportunity to sleep later with a delayed start time. So I heard that at least 2 times throughout different listening sessions with students. And while I haven't had an opportunity to fully explore all of the student survey data, I wonder if we're going to see more of that issue there. Remains to be seen. An elementary day that begins and ends before middle and high school would also reduce the availability of high school and middle school students who currently serve as tutors for different programs that we have within the district, as well as those community-based programs that rely on a lot of our high school students to provide those tutoring opportunities to younger students. So the final structural issue is around the dismissal time that's later in the afternoon. So dismissal times of 4:05 p.m. for middle school would overlap with the start of many of the extracurricular programs in the community. So many students and families, particularly the middle school students, have expressed a deep concern about this issue of dismissal time after, when their community-based activities have actually already begun, perhaps at 4 o'clock. Some have also expressed that if they need to ride the bus home and then have that turnaround time to get back out to their after-school activities that are community-based, that they're not going to get home in time to do that. The 4:05 p.m. dismissal for middle school also puts a strain on our school-based extracurricular programs. This comes from the feedback we've received from a number of our middle school sponsors of activities, of after-school activities, as well as coaches who support those athletic programs in the middle schools. There is concern that with clubs and after-school activities that aren't able to begin until after the 4 o'clock hour and then would end much later into the evening, that those coaches, our staff members who are providing those services, may not be able to continue with those opportunities because they need to get home to their own families for dinner time and family time. And so there's a lot of concern about the continuation of the current coaches and sponsors for those activities. And then we've heard from a number of students who've reported how important the extracurricular activities are to them in the middle school years, and especially when they start in the 7th grade and there's opportunities for both club sports in the community as well as school sports, that they're concerned that they may not be able to do both and they would have to choose one or the other because of the overlapping and conflicting schedules. And then dismissal times that are later for high school and middle school would constrict the amount of time that is available after school for other activities and commitments if those students were going to aim to get a bedtime that would give them enough time to still get up in the morning. We've heard this from many of our families and students who are expressing that concern that they're just going to have less time in the afternoon to accomplish everything that they need to or want to accomplish. And so things like participating in their extracurriculars or performing their job duties, babysitting for other people, and then also doing, completing the homework load that they have, that would just push them later into the evening. We're hearing that from students as a concern. So that was a summary of the early findings from these massive amounts of feedback and input that we've received over the past several months. And again, we still have work to do in combing through all of that feedback that's still coming in. However, I think that it's very fair to say that those are some of the primary areas of concerns with the proposed schedule, and those are the areas that are repeatedly coming back to us from different members of the community, from different groups, from students, from parents, from staff members. And so it's fair to say that these are some critical issues that we need to consider when we're considering the proposed schedule. So at the beginning of this month, it's hard to believe it was only 3 weeks ago. I said that all morning to Dr. Blackburn. I was blanking for a moment there. Sorry, it's been a long day. Kathy, as I call her. It's only been 3 weeks, but 3 weeks ago we convened a group of internal implementers with the idea of these are the people who would be responsible for putting this proposal in practice starting as early as this fall of 2020. And so Kathy came to the district to help us work through what is called a risk analysis, where we identify some potential problems and think about some potential solutions to those problems. And so I'm gonna let her talk about the process and the methodology involved in that. But I just wanted to communicate that we had this time with her. It was the first stab at a risk analysis of this proposed schedule. There's more work to be done, but we thought it was important to be able to share some of the early findings and the early results of that risk analysis from that implementer's perspective. And so at this point, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Dr. Blackburn, and she will go through the results of the risk analysis.
Good evening, and thank you again for the opportunity to be here. So it was important to get the input of people who would have significant responsibilities with a major change such as this. So you'll see we invited people. I think we had about 15 people from different functional areas of the district. We had activity and athletic directors from our secondary schools. Curriculum instruction was represented at the district level. We had other district administrators. We had building level administrators from all three levels, operations staff. We had our transportation director and the person who's responsible for routing. So it was really nice mix of people, again, who have significant responsibilities for implementing change. And we're going to be doing a comprehensive risk analysis, but we just got started in the day that we had together. So our purpose was to determine if the option that we presented to the board in October carried acceptable levels of risk, and then to really work to try to prevent or to minimize the seriousness of those risks. So we used a process called potential problem analysis, developed by a company, international management company called Kepner-Trigo. And this process has been used in business and industry throughout the world for over 60 years. It's been used in the educational environment for the last 25 years. And it really entails 4 different steps. The first one is predicting or forecasting what could go wrong when a change or a new decision is put in place. And with that, then what might cause those risks or potential problems to happen. We put a lot of emphasis on preventive actions so that we're not always having to put Plan B or contingent actions in place. So what are those preventive actions that we can put in place to reduce the likelihood that the risk happens? And then, of course, you always have to have contingent or Plan B actions just in case. So that's the methodology that we use. It was important before we started the risk analysis that this internal group had a good sense of what the input was from our internal and external stakeholders. So we reviewed themes that had been gathered, particularly during the month of December, maybe even a little bit before that in some of in the face-to-face meetings. And also important that they understood factual information about the implementation of this change, and particularly as it relates to cost around staffing and around infrastructure, cost of the buses, but also our capabilities for staffing. So, for example, putting bus drivers on buses. So we spent some time building understanding of what the community had said, as well as the facts related to implementation. And our implementation statement was implement the modified reorder schedule in the fall of 2020. And this is what we introduced to you at the October meeting. And you'll see the same time frame as what Dr. Paul had identified earlier. So with the potential problem analysis process, the first step is to identify the risk or the potential problems. And so we're forecasting, we're speculating into the future about what could go wrong when or if this particular option is implemented. And as a way of looking closer at those risks, we also thought it was important to assess the threat and to assess it in terms of the probability or the likelihood that that risk would happen. And we did that using high, medium, and low, but also to assess the threat in terms of seriousness of the impact if the risk was to happen. And risks are not certain, risks are not facts. This is speculation, it's forecast. But what we do know is that people who have the experience, who are the leads in those functional areas, they have a higher degree of certainty about risk when it's a risk in their area of responsibility. As it moves further away from their area of responsibility, so for example, our transportation people have real detailed thoughts about the finding bus drivers based on an increase in the number needed. So there was some certainty there when we assessed that threat, and there might have been less certainty when we looked at one of the risks, which is on another slide, of potential kindergarten parents who make a decision not to put their child in our school based on this this particular decision. So with some risk, more certainty. With others, it is speculation. And so what you'll see on the screen is I actually put these in sort of descending order of criticality. So all of the risks that have high probability and high seriousness are on this screen. I think it bleeds over into the next slide as well. But starting with elementary students walking to and boarding their bus in the early morning when it's dark creates safety issues, and this is for about 3 months of the year. High probability, high seriousness. Middle school and high school students miss key instructional time based on away games, and with the middle school, it's 90 minutes every time there's a game that they're involved in that's away, and for high school students, it's 70 minutes. But we also have coaches that are missing that time. The inability to find bus drivers based on an increase in the number needed. I think we had 11 drivers that would be needed with this option if it were to be implemented next year. The risk that it may be difficult to get bus drivers to do the late runs, knowing that late runs are going to be later than they are now. The additional strain on teachers covering classes for the middle and high school coaches and the sponsors. So when these folks leave to take care of their coaching and sponsoring activities, somebody has to cover their classes. So there's additional strain there. That was the worry. Inadequate time to put in an athletic infrastructure before next year's fall season. So now we're talking about lighting for the fields. We're talking about finding places for additional buses to be housed. And the asterisk that you'll see on the seriousness column indicates these are ones that we deemed important to work further on during our one-day session. So you'll see in just a few minutes, we had 10 most critical risk. We were able to work on 9 of the 10 in a more analytic way. So the list continues. If the crew and squash teams must practice in the morning, they lose the opportunity for additional sleep and other health and safety benefits. If it's an AM practice, reduced sleep time. If there's only one practice, then the students may have to be cut because there are 2 different rounds of practices. Existing traffic issues outside the high schools will be exacerbated. Now, this particular risk was not one that our internal stakeholder group identified during the day that we were together. It was identified at a later time based on administrative reflection, but that was deemed a critical risk also for us to work on. Scheduling conflicts limit the ability to transport elementary students from after-school academic support services. And now we're getting into a little bit less critical risk, but they're still very important. Students get home after 7 p.m. I think we're mainly looking at middle school students, perhaps high school as well, and walk home in the dark due to late runs. So all of these that you're seeing on this particular slide, we didn't get to do a further analysis, but we need to. So that will be a part of what we hope to have as next steps for us. And so I don't know that I need to read all of them, but I'll highlight some of them. Increased transportation cost if there's late runs, restricted community use of facilities. If the students are in the facilities later in the day, then when the community comes in, then you've got, there may have to be some restrictions as to when they can get in. The inability to use outside lighting if community restrictions are placed on it. Safety issues for middle school students walking home in the dark, particularly during the 2 weeks of civil sunset. There may be a need to combine middle school teams and reduce offerings because of the late runs. Other important risk, difficulty rerouting if there's inadequate lead time. And remember, our implementation statement is implement the modified reorder schedule in fall of 2020. If we need more contracted buses, the worry is that the cost of transportation may increase and we may not be able to get contracts. Not having enough high school and middle school coaches, again, medium probability, but high degree of seriousness if that risk holds true. Another important one was child care providers cannot accommodate increased parent and student needs with this particular option. Also inadequate parking space for new buses for the 2021 school year. We actually identified 37 risks, by the way. 37, okay. Additional strain if staff are covering more classes due to the meetings, due to really the extracurricular activities. A risk of that if families send their children outside the district for full-day kindergarten, that this does impact our district mission of serving our community, as well as having continuity of learning K-12 for the district. A risk of staff leaving the district or wanting to change levels if they can't find childcare resources, the increased cost if there's additional morning supervision needed for the high school and middle schools. Off-season practices may need to be moved back to a later time, possible contractual issues with elementary staff if there's a need for increased morning and afternoon supervision, and a delay in lighting if there's community litigation. And you'll see the risks continue. Late schedule makes it difficult to find middle schools to place in athletics. High school students don't get additional sleep due to habits, some of the habits that Dr. Paul mentioned earlier. Increased transportation costs with combined sports if the runs are late, bus runs are late, increased athletic injuries due to lack of warm-up time. Now we get the risks that don't appear to be quite as critical based on the perceptions of our group. Students in dual activities may not be able to participate in evening functions, possible safety issues if students are leaving our facility as the community comes into the building. Okay, so these were the 37 risks that the group identified. And so we took, there were 10 risks that we felt like we needed to provide a more thorough analysis on and continue the potential problem analysis process. We only got to 9 of the 10. And you'll see how this is laid out. We looked at each of those 10 risks, or 9 risks. For example, this is elementary students walking to and boarding the bus in the early morning when it's dark and it creates safety issues. So this is about 3 months of the year. And some of the likely causes that the internal group identified was lack of visibility in the early morning, lack of good lighting and sidewalks in the community, the age of the student, students are often without adults or older kids around, township geographic, there's much traffic, there are distracted drivers, there are kids playing in the roads. And so tied to the likely causes was the need to identify preventive actions. So we asked the question, what preventive actions can we take to prevent those likely causes from happening so this potential problem doesn't happen? And so I think throughout this analysis you'll see there is some creative thinking here with preventive and even contingent actions. So some of the actions require first graders to be accompanied by a parent or guardian, provide reflectors for all elementary students, have parents provide reflective clothes, devices, material, organize it so that there's one parent at a minimum at each bus stop, look at best practices for communities who have an early start for elementary and having timed bus stop lights or signals and symbols at certain stops. In spite of putting preventive actions in place, it's always important to have Plan B, to have contingent actions in your back pocket. But you have to plan your contingent actions ahead of time and not just think that they're going to be ready when you need them. So just in case we still realize there are safety issues as the fall evolves, perhaps partner with police for a presence in areas of high traffic, have a PR campaign to raise driver awareness, encourage township signage for driver awareness, consider yard signs for driver awareness. These are contingent actions to reduce the seriousness of the effect of the risk. So the next critical risk that was important to consider was lack of adequate time to schedule middle school after-school activities. And you'll see the likely causes. Tentative scheduling for fall sports has already happened. The uncertainty of contracting with drivers, we didn't know how many might be needed, requesting to be put in the spring. The uncertainty of securing coaches. It's usually done by the end of the school year, but we would need to know ahead of time how many middle and high school coaches would be willing to continue coaching, knowing that the day is going to be extended. Not enough time to get the athletic infrastructure in place, the lighting, the places for extra buses. And so you'll see some of the preventive actions. I'm just going to highlight some of them. tell the athletic league we may need an alternative schedule, ask the board to delay implementation next year. We could also survey elementary coaches and sponsors to assess their interest in possibly coaching for next year. So I'm not going to go through every one of them, just highlight a few. And contingent actions, just in case we put the preventive actions in place but realize we still don't have that time that we need, is communicate as early as possible about a possible modified schedule, communicate that to the families, look for parent volunteers for carpools, consider alternate spaces for our games, provide financial incentives for coaches. So the next critical risk that we looked at was that middle and high school students miss key afternoon instructional time. This was really an important one, keeping in mind for middle school students it's 90 minutes when there's a away game that they'll be missing at the end of the day, and for high school students it's 70 minutes. Likely causes, the away games require students to leave early, and other districts stick to the suggested game start time, and they have been pretty firm on that. So some preventive actions that we could put in place would request later start times through our league, secure other places with lights for games, for contingent actions, ensure that 7th and 8th grade core classes are not at the end of the day, because if they are now, then the kids are missing the same core classes every time they're going to a away game. Provide targeted academic support for athletes, or even consider a middle school rotating schedule so that the students are not missing the same classes every time.
Kathy, can I just suggest that we move through them a little bit? I want to get to some final points.
Okay, so shall I just say, here's the problem, may be difficult to get bus drivers to do late runs, give you a chance to look at the likely causes? Okay, I'm just going to give you a few seconds to look at what's here. I think the important thing is for you to know that we did a thorough job of trying to look at everything.
I think that's the important thing.
Okay.
That you not only saw some potential problems, but there was, and I was in and out of the sessions, and I was really pleased with the thought process. So things like, we know we might lose some secondary coaches, but we might have some opportunities with elementary teachers who would have liked to have coached, but were getting out late. We're going to add that to the survey that we do to see if people would be interested in that. Same thing with some issues with, for instance, traffic. Now, it wasn't administrators who pointed out traffic at the high school. It was actually our traffic consultant who did a traffic study. I think we should balance that against the fact that as we've looked at other districts, people have, when there's been new traffic problems, they found different ways to get around them rather than make drastic changes. So I think those are things that we have to further, I really appreciate the thoroughness, but
Got the time thing. Got it. All right, so you'll see the next potential problem had to do with the crew and squash team, and they're pretty restricted now in the facilities that they have. The next one is the inability to find bus drivers based on an increase in the number needed, which we would need for next year 11 additional bus drivers, and there's already a national shortage and less drivers in Pennsylvania than this year than last year. So you'll see some of the preventive actions, some that would involve working with the association, but some creative things as well. And contingent actions were thought through. Consider 3 students per seat in secondary. So not every action is attractive, but there are things that were thought through. Another risk, additional strain on teachers based on covering classes for middle and high school coaches and sponsors. So take a glance at what the causes were, what some of those preventive and contingent actions were. I think this was probably going to be a bigger strain on middle school because they don't rotate the schedule, so you got the same teachers that are covering classes with away games. Inadequate time to put in athletic infrastructure for next year's fall season. So take a quick look at some of the preventive and contingent actions based on the likely causes there. This one was a real tough one based on where we are in the year and also knowing that the actual board decision was going to be later this fall, so it's hard to get some things started when that decision's not coming up till later. This is the one that Bob mentioned, existing traffic concerns outside the high schools will be exacerbated. Again, there's some creative preventive actions, and then the contingent actions you'll see come from the Tavani and Associates traffic and parking analysis. So again, we actually worked on 8 because this one was done outside of our group. And from that risk analysis that we did, knowing there's still more to do, we came to the conclusion as a group that with this recommendation, and that was to not implement the modified reorder schedule next fall due to these critical risks, also understanding that limited preventive and or contingent actions could be put in place for the 2021 school year. Just didn't think some of them can happen in the next few months in preparation for the year. So that's our conclusion as a group, our recommendation to you. We also want to recommend the next steps, and that would be that we continue with our comprehensive analysis, particularly those risks that had high and medium probability and seriousness, and that we also conduct a risk analysis of not making a schedule change, of staying right where we are. What's the risk in doing that? So that's where we landed as a group.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As the board and the public can see, this was a lot of significant work since the last time we met. The implementation team is making the recommendation to me, not that the board not make a decision this spring, but that no matter what the decision is, if there's going to be a change, to give the community, parents, everybody an opportunity to make some adjustments in their schedules, in their lives going forward, and not to implement it in the fall of 2020. That's their recommendation to me and my recommendation to the board based on what I've seen. Further, in hearing much of the conversation that's taken place, while it did not come out as a recommendation from the task force, I have asked transportation to take a look at the issue of of middle school going first, high school going second, and elementary going third. While I recognize the fact that this does not necessarily fall in line with the science, I do see the complications that are going on, and they're taking a look at a 7:45 start for middle school, an 8:30 start for high school, and a 9 o'clock start for elementary. That's not perfect. It still has some issues with it, but I would like that risk analysis also to be done by the TRIGO team to see exactly what that provides. Further, even earlier than the November date, I believe it was earlier, Christina, when you contacted University of Maryland, 2018, University of Maryland, who had been purported as someone who did transportation studies. They looked at our situation and thought that they couldn't really do very much for us. We looked at a group out of New York. They likewise had some, thought we were pretty good where we were with transportation, so they didn't think that they could do much for us, and we went to MIT. First question we asked MIT is, what about the 2-tier model? Discussed that with them. They rejected that, said that that's not going to work for you. They said that they could guarantee us a 15% savings. When we pressed them on it, we realized that when they worked for Boston, they did about a 7 or 8% savings. And the Boston schools start anywhere from 7:15 in the morning to some school starts to 9:30 in the morning. So there's quite an array. It took us a long time to get references for MIT, which is a red flag when you say, well, who can we talk to? We finally talked to some people from Boston. They said, remember, this is a startup. This is not an established company. They thought that perhaps if we worked with them in 3 months' time, we might get some good information from them. There seemed to be some other districts that they didn't tell us about, but reading through the newspapers, we sort of said, looks like they looked at MIT, what about them? And they decided not to go with MIT because of a disagreement around privacy in terms of the student data. We have contacted them. They have given us a contract. We've returned, our attorney has reviewed the contract, has returned it to them with some suggested changes. I don't know that we'll be able to come to a good way with them, but we're working on that. But I would hasten to add that, again, this is not an established practice. This is a startup, but we want to make sure that we really look under every rock to make sure that we've done this. So once again, my recommendation is that we not implement next year, but that a decision be made this year so that we have some sense as to where we're going. And Christina, my understanding is there are advocates of the program who talk about waiting a year after a decision is made too. Is that correct? Okay. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Gilbert.
So first of all, I want to thank Superintendent Copeland and his team for just doing an incredibly thorough job of really gathering community input and thinking through all of the potential issues and kind of really taking the time to think this through very carefully. It takes a tremendous amount of resources to do so, and I think it's important given the concerns that many in the community have around adolescent sleep, that certainly the science as well has, and I think this is an extremely important issue and very much part of our strategic plan. So I think this has been, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone, and I'd like to thank everyone in the community who has been involved in this process, both over the last few months and, of course, quite a bit longer. So what I'd like to do is something a little bit different than we had planned given the time, which is I'd first like to take some questions and comments from the board, and then I would like to open it up to public comment on start time issues only. So in other words, we're going to move to do our regularly scheduled business meeting after we get some feedback from folks, because I think most folks are here because of the concerns, and I'm trying to be mindful of everybody's need for sleep. So so I think that's what we're going to do. But first, I would like to ask the board, and and then in a moment, I'll ask for people who, if you want to talk about the option that's out there, or if you want to talk about the issue of whether I keep saying GO team. The GO team is for the middle school, but essentially the GO team, the implementers, a recommendation and Superintendent Copeland's recommendation. So you can speak on anything you'd like, basically. But first, I would like to open it up to board members who might have questions and comments. I know you're jumping out of your seat. Go ahead.
Oh,
Ms. Ackman, go for it.
We'll start alphabetically. Thank you also. I wanted to thank the administration and I guess my fellow board members for pursuing and being open. Is that better? Okay. To the analysis. I think it's unfortunate that this original recommendation from the committee seemed to create so much division in the community depending on the age group. I do think we got a lot of valuable feedback, though, about some of the challenges. I think the presentation, it wasn't intended to seem like we're not open to changes. It just was very thorough. So I hope the public understands that everyone involved in this is trying to be thoughtful and take into account families, students, the actual administrators and teachers who need to be part of this, and our own constraints. That being said, I've been hoping from the first time we heard about the proposal that we would consider doing middle school first. And I'm really happy we're exploring that now because that might mitigate some of the issues folks have and align people more. But given all the work that's already been done and what we've explored, I'm wondering if there's any way to accelerate the timeline. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering that because I think, folks are anxious without making this something that is impossible to implement. So I was hoping you could just comment a little more about that. Thank you.
Sure. So it takes about 6 weeks for transportation to get a handle on any new change, and I think we've gotten enough permutations now on our own. We'll see what happens with MIT. I mean, again, they don't have a track record that I can look to and say, here's how soon they would be able to get back to us, even if they work with us. Even if the district, even if we were going to recommend a middle school first, we would not recommend it for next year for the same reasons why we wouldn't recommend the elementary. We really would want to make sure that we have a community that's sort of got itself geared for that situation. That's not the best answer I could give, but it's the only one. It's the honest one.
Thank you.
First, I just wanted to clarify the times, if middle school went first, what the times would be?
So right now, we're looking at 7:45 start for middle school. We're looking at a 8:30 start for high school and a 9 o'clock start for elementary school.
Okay. And can you speak a little bit more to sort of outside pressures or outside groups that are concerned about the switch for this year, for this fall?
Well, we've gotten some community feedback. I think you heard some of it in the presentation. So for instance, if we were to wait to make a decision in, say, March or so forth, there are young families who have to make child care decisions now. They're already starting to sign them up now. We've heard from some of the wraparound kindergarten programs that if you send us your kindergartners that much earlier than everybody else, there literally won't be enough room for them. And so we've got to, we would need time to figure out what to do. That's just a few of the examples of some of the logistical issues that aren't ready. We've not been really successful in dealing with the middle school after-school activities. That's a significantly longer day than anyone who we compete against. So how to really figure out how to do that, how to figure out the staffing when the coaches have to leave an hour and a half early and so forth and so on. And you generally set that up a year in advance. So those are just some of the logistical things that are making us concerned.
And is there any way to compress the 7:45 closer to 8, so that it would be 8:30, 9, 8:30?
So when we did that, when we did the push so that there was like a 30-minute in between, I think it came out to an additional 34 buses. I'm looking at Mr. Lill. He says yes. So that was the issue. Now, one of the things that we might be able to say, we haven't done this yet, so don't stop writing.
You may not want to say that to a room full of people. You're wanting her to stop writing.
I think we have to, if we go to a group like MIT, we have to put here are some things that we want you to consider in this. Start at this time, make sure our day is no shorter than it is, and so forth and so on. We're not there yet. We can put some parameters around them that might be able to give us other efficiencies.
Ms. Kalish.
So my question had to do with that change to a 30-minute gap, because before in the previous presentations, we'd always been told that to make it feasible for the transportation department to do this successfully, we needed a gap in start time of 40 minutes. So this new middle school first plan has us going with a 30-minute gap between high school and elementary.
At the end of the day.
And the beginning of the day between high school and elementary, if you start high school at 8:30 and middle school at 9.
No, It would be middle
Or
school at
high
around
s- and-
7:45,
yeah.
high school at 8:30, and middle school, elementary at 9. And it has to do with the fact that there's a significant amount of time in between the elementary. I'm looking at Mr. Lill again, because I asked the same question. Can you articulate that, Mr. Lill?
You would need to come to the mic, please. Isn't there issues?
So
with the
mostly what I'm
microphone?
getting at is that doing this flip you said earlier, would be 7 additional buses this way, and then to go to move from 7:45 to 8 would be another 34 buses instead, and I just don't know why why one 10 minutes is 7 buses and one 15 minutes is another 25 buses.
Okay. Jim Lill, Director of Operations. The 7-bus scenario, if you will. Mr. Copeland, real quick, what would the start times be in that scenario that we were discussing? I just want to make sure we're on the same.
7:45 for the middle school, 8:30 for the high school, and 9 o'clock for,
The elementary.
what am I reading here? I'm sorry. 9:10 for the elementary school.
Okay. So if I may, what that would do for dismissal, you would have middle school dismissal at, and I'm reading my notes, 2:35. High school dismissal at 3:30. Elementary school dismissal at 4 p.m. So to your question, how do you do that in a half an hour? Because you only have that 3:30 to 4 o'clock between the high schools and the elementary schools. The answer to that question is, look at where we are with the middle schools. If the middle school dismisses at 2:35, it would be 55 minutes until the high school would dismiss at 3:30. That gives us about enough time to get every one of our middle school routes done or close to done, have the buses back to the high school, queued up, lined up, stacked up, whatever you want to call them, idling and ready. Very similar to what happens now at 2:40, in which case all of the high school buses are lined up bumper to bumper. At 2:48, they roll. If you're not on the bus at 2:48, they roll. That gives them the ability to get moving. They can basically complete their routes in about 20-25 minutes, in which case they're dropping off the last high school child, headed to an elementary school. Some of those buses will get there at, some of those buses will get there at the elementary dismissal at 4 o'clock. Some may get there at 4:05. Some may get there at 4:10. That's very similar to what happens in an elementary school at the end of the day today. All 15 buses at a particular elementary school don't get there precisely at dismissal. 3 or 4 of them come in, are loaded, leave. Another 3 or 4 come in, loaded, leave. So that was some of how that calculation was initially assessed, and we're continuing to take closer looks at that data.
Yeah, let me hasten to add, we haven't done the risk analysis on this yet. I'm just letting folks know that this is another scenario. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Ms. Pine?
What impact and is that bus analysis incorporating a third middle school so that the number of students, I guess it's not the number of students as our enrollment grows, but that it's K through 4, that it's 5, 8.
The one that I just mentioned?
Right.
I believe that one was just the existing 2 middle schools, correct? Yes. We know that we get somewhat more savings if it's all 3 middle schools. But again, there's just so many scenarios we can run given some of the other pushes on our time.
Can I ask a question if no one else has? I usually go last. Given that we're introducing the scenario of middle school going first as a possibility, and I've really appreciated the amount of community feedback we've had at listening sessions, and I mean, it's just been a tremendous amount of feedback. I'm wondering if we can, if not at this moment, have a potential plan for gathering more community feedback on the 3 options at this point. In other words, can we go back to the community with these different options in some manner to get some feedback.
Sure, and probably not in the same manner with which we did it this fall. That was just a lot of different sessions. What we planned to do, but it was helpful. The listening sessions that we went to helped form the problem and risk analysis, and we need to get that kind of information back from the community. So what we would do is we would include this as a third choice on a survey and ask some feedback questions around that, which would help us formulate a risk analysis going forward.
Okay, so there obviously will be then, because my understanding of your recommendation at this point is to make a decision this spring, but delay potential implementation a year so that families, providers, all teachers, all the different people whose lives are going to be impacted would then have that additional time to
Correct.
Okay. Absolutely.
So just really simple, is there a timeline established for the implementation of the survey?
So we think that Hanover can turn over this, because we had it set and now we're going to make some changes. They're looking at me, mid-February is what we're shooting for. She's shaking her head like this. So mid to late February. And then get it out and move. So we probably wouldn't be ready in March. We'll probably have to push that decision-making to April.
Okay, but obviously I think we would all be in agreement, and I know that our communications team would be in agreement as well, that we would need to make sure that this information now would be getting out there. Okay, I would like to give, okay.
And just to be clear, the survey, is that going to be anonymous? Is there going to be some mechanism to identify families with kids at multiple levels? And I appreciate everyone's sort of feedback, but I think if you're, not to discount the value of your feedback, the families that are best positioned to sort of adjudicate the various options are the ones with kids at multiple levels right now, because there's recency bias in kids, and if you only have kids in one level.
Sure. I can ask Dr. Paul to talk about the methodology that Hanover uses real quick for their survey.
So based on some of the different iterations of the survey that we've gone through, we can approach this in several different ways. The benefit of having Hanover perform the survey for us is that they will not identify anything that might even be close to identifiable. They will not provide that information back to us. We will only get summary information back. So some of the early drafts of the survey that we've worked through include some of those screener questions that would help identify families, the number of students they have, which schools they attend. So there would be some identifying questions that would serve as some screener information that we could then use to disaggregate the results, or that Hanover would use to disaggregate the results, so we could get some more meaningful information such as you're suggesting.
Thank you. At this time, what I'd like to do, so let me explain, because this is different than what we usually do, and I know Ms. LaPere is going to be thrilled with me, but we're going to have essentially 3 different public comment periods tonight. So we're going to have one now for anybody who wants to speak on any issue related to start times only. So we're going to, anyone who would like, just give me 1 second, who would like to, make a comment around start times, and in terms of, this proposal at this point to make the decision in the spring, but to delay the implementation while we're gathering this other information. You can comment on that. You can comment on any of the proposals, the new middle school first proposal, anything you want related to start time. When we do that, the board will have a brief discussion after that, at which point I'm going to open up public comment on agenda items only, because we actually have a business meeting that we have to, pay the bills and all that stuff. So I'll do that. And then once we're done with that, at the very end of the evening, we will open it up to any issue at all. People, I would ask that if you want to talk about start times, if you could do that now. I can't prevent anyone from speaking multiple times, but I think it would be helpful if we could do that. So right now, yes, I'm sorry. Before we go ahead, I would like any student at one of our schools, that is any current student at a school, to come and sign in with Ms. LaPera, or they may already have, and she'll start calling your names. And then, I know it's a little bit difficult, but if people want to sign up, as people are speaking, it's a little bit difficult. It gets a little busy, but what I would like to do is get the sign-up sheet, so we'll keep it open for a few more minutes. So if you would like to, if you're, anyone who lives in this district or pays taxes in this district and would like to comment on this issue, if you could come sign up now, and then we will be able to close the list shortly. So I'm going to ask people to quickly do that. If you would like to speak, please come sign up now, and then we'll get started in a moment.
So, can I? So what I'm going to do is, if you're a parent or a resident of the district, I'm going to put your sign-in sheet over on the side so that the students can get started, because our cameramen just don't like it when everybody's hovering here. So
Okay, I
I'm gonna go ahead and take care of
apologize
that.
to the cameraman.
I know, but this is different, and I apologize. And if you can stay behind that seat, I would thank you.
You're good.
Okay, so just to remind everyone that you have 3 minutes. You don't have to take the full 3 minutes, but you have 3 minutes. You need to give us your name and generally where you live in the district. You don't have to give us our exact address. I will remind people that this is being videotaped, so you have no privacy here, nor do your children. So if you do not want to give details to anybody about your child, this would not be a good time to do that. Having said all that, we are also happy to take email comments to, I think, well, we've got different emails, but usually we just do community comments. Again, those are subject to right to know, but less likely for that to occur. So, and with that, we will have our first student, who I think I might recognize, Narb.
Yep.
I'm right, okay.
Thank you. So my name is Graham. I go to Harridan High School. My colleague Charisma and I are both representing Harridan Student Council. I'm the president, and she's the sergeant at arms. We recently did a study that our Principals Advisory Board, which is a group of students who are either apply or we hand select, and we meet once a month and we talk with our administration about different issues. So our last meeting, we sent out the survey afterwards. Keep in mind that the administration does not necessarily endorse us presenting the survey tonight. The survey received 233 responses, which is about 20% of the student body, which is okay, but it still provided valuable feedback. Our first question was mandatory on the survey, and it was simply, would you like to move the high school start time to 8:25 a.m.? 62.7% of the students said yes, and 37.3% responded no. Keep in mind that these students that responded were only Harridan High School students from any grade 9 through 12. And as student council officers, we're presenting this impartially, so our next questions in the survey were open-ended questions. Students could provide testimonials on how they would be affected by the change, whether for better or for worse. And we're presenting that proportionally. So generally, we're trying to get 2/3 of pro later start times, and then 1/3 for pro status quo. So the second question, which was open-ended, stated what are the potential benefits of the proposed change start times. And most responses generally were better sleep and more sleep. Another student commented that they could utilize that morning, that extra hour, to get more homework done, wake up earlier, get more things done in the morning. Another student said, quote, "If I get more sleep, my performance in school would most likely increase because I wouldn't get easily tired in class. I also wouldn't be in a rush to get out of the house," end quote. And another student stated, quote, "Some nights, no matter how early I try to go to bed, I wake up feeling sick with tiredness every morning. If I was able to wake up at a reasonable hour with the sun, teachers wouldn't often see students falling asleep in class during the first few sets of the day." Our next question was what potential problems do you see with the proposed schedule? A student said how sports might possibly be affected by practices, but we should still prioritize the mental, physical, emotional health of our students before we prioritize athletics. And another student said, quote, "I personally play a sport and I understand that we will have to miss more classes, but I believe that it is an acceptable consequence," end quote. That's just an example of what a student athlete had to say about the issue. Now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Charisma, who's going to expand upon this speech.
Thank you very much, Graham.
Hi, my name is Charisma Hassan, also a student at Harriton High School. Just continuing off of Graham, the next question that we asked in our survey was what other questions or concerns would you like to share with the Board of Directors? And a few students said, quote, "As a four-year athlete on the crew team, probably the greatest time commitment of any Harriton sport, more pro-change students, athletes needs to be heard. Student athletes have this image of them unanimously opposing start time changes, and that's simply not the case." Another student said, "Faculty commuting to school later every day will have to deal with the rush hour traffic both to and from school with the proposed start changes. Support for the late opening proposed that includes a shorter school day and possibly longer school year schedule." Another quote, "It makes a difference to wake up when the sun is up, which is much healthier than waking up when it is still dark outside." Then a few tentative notes that we took from a few observations from the survey were that some members of our community will think differently once their children are in high school and realize that the amount of work and stress of high school is different than they believed. Another belief was that at some schools, teachers utilize the street parking, which would not be available if they were to arrive later in the morning and would not be available to local residents until later in the afternoon. The next question was, what else can LMSD do to support student wellness? There were a few just answers that were quite just outlandish, but also we received things like let a 5 on an AP exam equal an A for an AP class, mental health reform, more specific mental health programs and things like that in our school district, and generally many students just commented on the fact that this is a much broader issue than just start times. The last question we asked was if you have any other questions or comments for the Board of Directors, please provide them here. A few quotes we wanted to insert. "Please consider other options, including a flex period like Set 0 that would begin before the official start of the school day for students that participate in extracurriculars or other activities that would provide them with the chance to get caught up or potentially make the day shorter for kids who participate." So just to recap, although the amount of responses we received is limited, the survey still provides good quality feedback from Harriton High School specifically. Generally, about 2/3 of the consensus was towards later start times. However, the responses reported tonight were proportional to the responses received, which makes sense as there were more responses for later start times. But again, we ourselves remain impartial in front of the board. Concerns are mostly the same as were previously mentioned. Many students stressed how pushing back school start times will not solve the entire issue of student well-being, but it's a step in the right direction. The majority of the questions from this survey were created by our school's administration. The entire process of formulating and dispersing this survey was done with close conjunction with Harriton's admin. This is not the end of our research, though. We plan to conduct further research in our own surveys that is not advised or connected to our school's administration. So we hope to really have some in-depth conversations and future things.
Thank you so much for taking the time to collect all this data for us. We really appreciate it and value your input.
Hi, my name is Sydney Halpern. My comments today reflect my beliefs and beliefs on behalf of over 20 other Lower Marion High School students. I live in Marion Station. I'm a junior at LM, and I'm exhausted. I went to Marion Elementary and Ballyconwood Middle School, Since I was in elementary school, I was told by the time I reached high school, the start time would be later than 7:30. Next year, I'll graduate from LM. In the meantime, LM students are suffering, according to LMSD's own reports. We can talk about predictions or possible outcomes, but here's the data collected by LMSD's own reports. 66%, the overwhelming majority of secondary students in LM reported getting less than the recommended hours of sleep on a typical school night. According to LM's own policy on health and reported here, I would have had to go to bed hours before this meeting started. 59%, it's important to note that 59% of LMSD's high school students said changing the time that school begins and ends would be quite or very effective in addressing students' stress, health, and well-being. The school district has had ample time to make its decision, during which, as specified by LMSD's own reports, Lower Merion students' health has suffered. Every year, the board waits to make its decision, another class graduates. It's time for LMSD to put the health of students first. It's time for healthy start times. Many students feel the same way. For the remainder of my time, I'm going to share the names and statements from other LM students who feel it's time for the district to start prioritizing the health of students. These students could not make it for athletic, academic purposes. One even had to leave early today because she had to wake up early tomorrow morning for school. Quote, I support changing the start times because of health benefits, end quote, Ava Clifford Jr. and track member. She and several other students, including Ellie Ward, squash player and soccer player, Lily Garden soccer player, expressed their support for healthy start times and additionally suggest that lights on the Arnold Field would make this an easier transition for athletes. Junior Celine Thomas Phillip, quote, as a student and active member of players, I know later start times would allow me to get the sleep I desperately need and give me the energy I need to perform my best as a student, end quote. The other LM students who want to express their support to the board to take action and enact later start times for healthy high school students include Daisy Cunningham, Evan Fine, Emmy Pearson, Charlotte Gordon, Mimi Halpern, Ann Hamilton, Kassara Friedman, Sharad Ahmed, Trent Cohen, Riley Reese, Abby Schomburger, Jordan Dominique, Ali Dunlevy, Dea Stevens, Sophia Dadal, Ariana Ahmed, and Sophia Clark. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Eli, Noah, Andrew, and then Molly.
I'm Eli Feldman. I'm a student of Harridan High School, live in Gladwin. So last week I got my driver's permit, and so I am very aware of the risk of the road, including drowsy driving. A AAA study found drivers who miss 2 to 3 hours of sleep a day more than quadruple their risk of getting into a crash compared to drivers who sleep for 7 hours. According to federal regulators, the accident risk from drowsy driving is comparable to driving under the influence. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates that drowsy driving was responsible for 72,000 crashes, 44,000 injuries, and 800 deaths in 2013. However, these numbers are underestimated, and up to 6,000 fatal crashes each year may be caused by drowsy drivers. The CDC's guidelines say that the best way to prevent drowsy driving is to get enough sleep. According to their guidance, teens need at least 8 hours of sleep. While many of us are doing homework past 11 and then have to be up by 6 o'clock to get to school by 7:30, that's just impossible. A study published by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine found that teen drivers who start class earlier in the morning are involved in significantly more motor vehicle accidents than peers with a later high school start time. No one doubts that it will be inconvenient for the parents of elementary school students to rearrange for the new schedule, but it seems short-sighted not to recognize that only a few years later the school schedules for their children, which may be inconvenient when they are little, will be downright dangerous when they are in high school if the schedule change is not made and made soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eli.
Noah Salmonson, Narberth, and senior at Harrington High School. If not now, when? We've spent years getting to this point, getting to the brink of what could be the biggest change that I've seen during my time here. And I've been attending board meetings since I was in 5th grade. If this plan, or any plan, is delayed for another year, then we will fail to provide an entire grade of students something that we all fundamentally agree is an important change. That is over 600 students. Imagine having to look those children in the eye and explain to them that while you believe the issue is important, it's just not important enough for them to reap its benefits. Now, on to other issues. To those that say that we're just shifting the issue to the elementary school students, what makes it okay that the burden is then kept on the high schoolers? Let me tell you, high school is a crazy time. Between people trying to max out AP or IB classes to students participating in all sorts of activities outside of school, which, let's be clear here, is just as important as classes during the day. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Now, what I've heard from many people, including what was listed on the presentation tonight, is that if the time is changed, it won't help, as high schoolers will just choose not to go to sleep at a reasonable hour. Let's face the reality. Unless someone here has invented a time machine, there's only 24 hours in a day. Now, with that time, students are in school for over 7 hours, then have extracurriculars and hours upon hours of homework. I've heard people say that if students want more sleep, they can just put the phones away and stop gaming late at night. And to those who say that, I ask you this. Since when has asking students to forego their free time ever been an acceptable option? I have said time and time again that we need to take a serious look at not just moving start times, but moving start times with other meaningful changes, including taking a long, hard look at our homework policy, because that is the way to offset the lost time, not having students lose their valuable free time that they depend on. At this time, I'm reminded of a quote by Walt Disney, and it goes as follows. First, think. Second, dream. Third, believe. And finally, dare. We've thought, we've dreamt, we've believed. I'm asking the board to dare.
Thank you very much, Noah.
Andrew Gambino, Narberth, Welsh Valley. A couple weeks ago, me and a couple of friends decided to put together a letter to share our opinion on school start times and why we should just stay with the regular school start times. Now, keep in mind that I'm skipping around a lot in this letter, but so it won't flow. It may not flow as clearly as I'm saying it. It has come to our attention that Lmsb wishes to change the school start times. If we are to follow through with this, then there will be more cons than pros. No matter what the district chooses to get the money for things that would ensure safety for students, if the start times do change, someone will be unhappy and upset. If students have activities outside of schools, they may have to leave early in order to make it to these activities on time. Also, if students' after-school activities end later, then they will get home later, which will give them less time to do their homework and other schoolwork before they have to eat dinner and go to bed. If I stand corrected, the new school start times are supposed to make sure that students get more sleep. But with after-school activities and out-of-school activities, students would get less sleep. Due to lack of sleep, students may become sick and miss many days of school. Also, because of the school start times would be later, middle and high schoolers, students will just stay up later because they have free time and because they don't have to wake up as early, defeating the purpose. Even if students get more sleep after high school, they cannot wake up early in college and later in life for a job. Many jobs require people to be in very early, making students unprepared for this. Students will have to then rely on an alarm, which studies show waking up to that makes you unhappy and unfocused for the day. The new start times for the Lower Merion Public School will cause a lot of problems for the district, the students, and the families. The districts would have to pay for things to ensure safety and for aftercare in all 6 of the elementary schools. The students would have less time to do things they want and need to go. The parents would have to leave work early or pay a lot of money for a babysitter to watch the kids after school, and students will be unprepared for the real world. The negatives outnumber the very minimal positives for the new start times, making the start times almost useless. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Molly Diamondstein. I am a 7th grader at Valley Kingman Middle School. Having a new start time would make playing sports a lot harder. We would have to leave class at least 2 hours early to make it on time to play the game, which would make it a lot harder to make up the missed classes. Playing sports has been very beneficial for me and a lot of my friends. I've gained a lot of confidence while playing sports. I even tried out for a sport I didn't know how to play. Also, I have made great friendships that I wouldn't have made if sports weren't available to me. My younger sister, who is 7, would have to get up way earlier than she does now. This would affect her because she would not get the right amount of sleep that a 7-year-old child should get. If she wanted to get enough sleep, she would have to go to bed at least 5:30 to 6 o'clock. That is way too early. She would also get out of school at 2:30, which the middle schoolers would get out at 4:05. We would either have to get a babysitter or put her in aftercare. Both of these options cost money, which some people don't have, or that might be troublesome for some people. And in my opinion, my older brother, who is in high school at Lower Marion, would just stay up later because he wouldn't have to go to school as early. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of the students. So we're going to go ahead and start on the start time sign-up sheet. Rebecca Rendell, Jamie Vibert, James Stretch, Amy Carroll Scott, and Greg Dulski. And if you could please line up over there. The first person can come on up. Rebecca? Rebecca Rendell, Jamie Vibert, James Stretch, Amy Carroll Scott, Greg Dulski.
Hello. Sorry, my name is Rebecca Rendell. I spoke at the last meeting about my personal difficulties getting my 4 children to bed in time to be at school at 9 o'clock already for the elementary school. Since I spoke at that meeting, I have spoken to many, many parents, dozens of parents in the elementary school, in the middle school, and the high school. And what has become clear to me is that we're all looking for the same thing. We all want our kids to get enough sleep. It's so important that we are all out here in the freezing cold, what is late at night for many of us. We are all out here today. We are all out here talking to each other. We are going to do whatever we need to do to make sure our kids get the sleep they need. And while I appreciate the action that the board has already taken in obviously thinking very seriously about this issue, in listening to what the students and parents have to say, from where I'm standing, it seems as though the question we have asked is, who are we going to push under the bus? Are we going to push the high school students under the bus by delaying a change and forcing another year or 2 or 3 or 4 of students who have to wake up too early for their health and academic success? Are we going to push the elementary school students under the bus? The students who need the most sleep and the students who are not capable of defending themselves and their needs at this stage. Tonight, I have heard some talk about pushing the middle school students under the bus. Now, there aren't a lot of middle school parents here because they don't know they're in danger. Just like the elementary school parents didn't know we were in danger when this original plan was being considered. And my ask today from the board is to reconsider how this is being done. I can't believe another survey and another listening session and another year or 2 or 3 or 4 is the right thing to do. What needs to happen is for all kids to get enough sleep. We need to move the high school start time later without, watch my language, without messing up anyone else's schedule. The question needs to be, how do we make sure no one needs to start before 8:15 or 8:30? What do we need to do to make that happen for every single student? That is what we are all here for. That is what we all want. Please, 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 let that be the question we ask, and ask it now, because there is true urgency here, and I believe it can be done, and I hope that's exactly what you guys will do tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jamie Vibbert. I'm from Penn Valley, and in full disclosure, I have 2 kids who are in elementary school, and I probably shouldn't have let Rebecca go first because she stole all my thunder. But I absolutely agree with everything she says, and I think most of the people here in red agree with that exact statement. It's not about not pushing high school times back. It's about not pushing everybody else's times forward so that we are harming some students at the cost of others. And what I find very disconcerting is when we heard Dr. Paul's presentation about all the community feedback, I saw very little of that make it to the risk analysis that was then presented. It's relatively easy to put up a risk analysis on the board where you're talking about preventing some of the harms from elementary school students waiting in the early morning hours. It's going to be much harder for you to do a risk analysis where you are evaluating the discriminatory impact on lower income families who have elementary school students and cannot afford the changes in childcare that moving the start times for elementary school students up. And I also don't think that a risk analysis is going to adequately take into account the harm on the elementary school students, for which I have seen no research. There is a ton of research out there that says, yes, high school students should get more sleep. There's no research out there that says elementary school students don't need equal amounts of sleep. So until we see that research that we're not harming other children, the answer cannot be, let's harm some children and not others. That is not an acceptable solution. So come to me and tell me, be transparent with us about what the financial burdens are. If there's got to be a ballot initiative so that we can raise taxes, let there be a ballot initiative, but we cannot hurt kids, and we certainly cannot hurt kids in a discriminatory way for those who have lower incomes.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is James Stretch. I am a parent of 2 elementary school children, and I also am the parent of a special needs child. There are 3 things I saw in the risk analysis tonight, 2 that were listed, 1 that was completely missing. First off, the thought of lighting extra fields. We have a lovely field right across the street. I'm 40. My mom is a graduate from Harridan. My wife's a graduate from Lower Merion. My kids will graduate from Harridan. There has been discussions about lighting the field across the street for 40 years, so let's stop pretending like that's ever going to happen. So that is not a real risk analysis. Second, the busing shortage. That is a national issue. There is a makeshift solution for that for us that is much more convenient than other people. The city of Philadelphia has numerous public service employees who retire at 50, 55, and 60 that have the required licensing we need, that would happily sign on to get the benefits to take them to Medicare age, and that many will all be from public safety with the needed security clearances. We're talking about 11 to 12 bus drivers. I work with the city employees. I know full well that there are more than enough willing to take on that burden and do that for us that would meet our needs. The third thing that was not included goes back to my own selfish interests. I have a special needs child. Nowhere in that risk assessment did I see anything resounding a description of anything regarding the ADA. Not one. From the elementary to the middle school, sleep times disproportionately affect special needs kids in a way that will result in numerous harm to them in terms of their development and their future education and their ability to be successful moving out of Lower Merion. We are the crown jewel in special education in the state of Pennsylvania and probably the nation. To ignore that so wholeheartedly does a great disservice to our school district and to the special needs parents and the special needs community. One of the other things on that is it also endangers our teachers. Lack of sleep time for kids with behavioral issues does result in more behavioral issues at school, which can lead to more injuries or disciplinary problems for our students. That is an unacceptable solution for our staff and for those children. That is something that really needs to be examined in depth. I know that there will be more parents out here who will speak about this special needs issue, but this is something that I am surprised that was completely missing. With that, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Amy Carroll Scott. I'm a resident of Narberth. I'm a parent of two Belmont Hills Elementary School students, one of whom is about to go to middle school. So I'm about to experience the kids at two different levels. I'm also faculty at Drexel University at the School of Public Health. I completely understand the science. I completely respect it. But I also want to express two different experiences to you. One is of a family with two working parents who live nowhere near walking distance to our school and have to deal with some of the concerns that were expressed by Dr. Paul, concerns that the community have. My biggest concerns are about childcare, are about who is going to take care of my child when I was planning on relying on my middle school student, was planning on relying on my high school student babysitters, and also St. Joe's babysitters who also have start times, also have classes that will conflict with an earlier start time. And so, trying to understand all of the childcare repercussions. So my point tonight is about taking a look at the process of implementation. What was expressed earlier, which is that the concerns of the community were not contained within the risk analysis. And so I would love to see a risk analysis that understands and takes into account all of the real risks that's being felt by all the different voices you're hearing from our school community, and is able to tie to that some engagement by members of the school community in some of those proposed solutions. I'd like to see what it would take in terms of amount of time to implement some of those solutions to some of those concerns, and what the feasibility is for some of those creative solutions. Are they going to happen? Is it feasible, and in what time period? Because this is about changing a huge system. We made a very dramatic decision to change our aftercare program in just 4 months, and it did not go well in this district. And so I would hate to see for us to, once again, on the backs of two working families and folks who don't have the economic resources to be able to drive their kids to and from new before and after care programming, to be able to have a more systematic approach, to be able to look at the risks as articulated by our school community, look at the solutions, see how long they will take, and whether or not those solutions are feasible. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Greg Dolsky, Esther Kim, Kevin Naughton, Sarah Wolf, and Yoon Lee. And can I remind everyone to please say your name and the town that you live in within the district? Thank you.
My name's Tracy Spivak, and I'm from Wynwood.
Oh, I'm sorry. You weren't next. I'm sorry.
Oh, was it? Oh,
No.
Yeah, I had signed up early on, actually.
I know, but we had asked everybody to re-sign up over here. That's what Dr. Gilbert had askst.
Oh, okay. Well, then I didn't re-sign up.
Gee, I knew that's what
Okay,
was
slow down. It's okay. It's all right. Why don't we, are you the only person who's sort of out of line at the moment? Is that the issue?
Yeah, I signed up third.
I can't
Okay,
go back
I
to
need
the
everybody
original
to
list.
stop for a moment.
Everybody
Thank
on
you.
the original list want to speak about start time only, is what Dr. Gilbert was asking. So
Okay.
if you wanted to speak about start time only, then we will go back to the original list. I
Okay,
apologize.
so this is very confusing. Apologize for the confusion here. So I have this group of people who are signed up right now. How many people do we have on the new list? You got a lot. And how many people on the old list? And we don't know if all the old list has start time or.
And then I have 4 other sheets of previously signed in people.
Okay, I'm going to have to, I understand that people are going to be upset. I'm in a no-win situation here right now. I'm going to continue with the list of the people who signed up to speak specifically about start times, and then we'll have to go back and start with the other list because those people may or may not be around start times. There's nothing I can do here. Okay, but your name hasn't been called yet, so let's just go with whose name has been called. I can't fix this at the moment. So I'm sorry for the confusion. I'm doing the best I can right here. I have people on the original list who I'm assuming are not actually here to talk about start times. I think they. Okay, so then what I will do is, okay, I thought I was trying to actually make this easier for the folks who were here to speak about start times. So I apologize for the confusion. I guess we go back to the original list. I apologize. Go back to the original list. If you're not being called to speak, if you're not going to speak about start times, please don't come up, and we'll get you on the other side if we get there. And then we'll go to the second list. So go for it.
Some people may have signed up twice, maybe. I don't know. So now we have Carney, Hopman, Peter.
Let this guy go.
Yes. Yes. Yes, I am. Good evening. My name is Greg Dalsky. I live in Gladwin, and I have 2 elementary school students, and I also have a child who's below the age of elementary school. And the reason why I came to speak, I was moved to speak by, frankly, the disconnect in the presentations between the 2 doctors. So we first had a summation of the risks and the concerns of the community. And the concern of the community, what I heard in summation is, yes, there's an agreement that we all want the high school students to get sleep, but we're concerned that there's going to be harm. It's not just scheduling. It's not just trying to orchestrate mastering who can cover what among parents for early school students, but there's going to be real harm to the elementary school students. And in the risk assessment, that it was absent. I mean, there was no assessment of, one of the concerns that was raised in the community was that there's going to be a lack of family time. I'll say this, I put this in an email to the board. I'm concerned, I struggle to get home in time to be with my kids for family dinners as is. If my kids have to go to bed earlier, I won't make it. I won't make it for family time for dinner. And on top of that, it'll be hard for me to read with my kids. I have 3 kids to read with. It's hard as a parent to read with each of them the recommended amount of time. If we move the school times up, we won't be able to do that with our elementary school students. These are the types of harms that were being expressed in the community but weren't being assessed in the risk assessment. And I think that's a real miss. I'm also concerned by the fact that when we're talking about the people who may be impacted, we're talking about elementary students, we're talking about middle school students, we're talking about high school students. But there's been some mention of, but I don't think enough, the kids that aren't in school yet. My 2-year-old comes with me to the bus stop in the morning. I'm going to have to bring my 2-year-old to the bus stop even earlier in the morning. And that's hard. That needs to be assessed, and it wasn't. We need to look at the assessment of the risk for the whole community that's being assessed by the community, and not just traffic patterns, because candidly, I haven't heard a single person mention a concern about traffic patterns. We're concerned about hurting the kids with these adjustments in times. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we ready? Carney, Carrie, thank you. Sorry, and then we have Peter Soderich, Jim Spear, Lee Halpern, Angela Alivi, Linda Mullins.
Hi, Carrie Hartman, Marion Station. So there's not going to be a solution that makes everybody happy. Once you put forward the middle school solution, the next time you have one of these, you're going to have a lot of middle school parents here. And what is it called? The twilight thing? Okay. Somebody is going to say, I can't have a 13-year-old walk in the dark. I mean, if there's sidewalks probably for 2 weeks, it's okay, but there's going to be objections by middle school parents. There's no way everybody's going to be happy, and there's no way everyone's going to start school at the same time. You all know that's coming, and if you don't, it's coming. As leaders, at some point, you are going to have to make a decision about how to address what the problem is. And I'm hearing so much I've heard so much about sports tonight and coaches. How many times have I heard the word coaches and coaching tonight? A ton. And can I say the S word on Lower Merion Community Access Television? No?
Please, this isn't the Grammys.
I don't give about coaches. Here's the S word I care about. Science. Science is what I care about. And we have science that tells us how circadian rhythms work with children and adolescents. And I have a 15-year-old who is at home right now, and he's using other four-letter words because I just texted him and told him, it's not happening next year, sweetie. Guess what? Your junior year at Lower Merion, you're getting up at 6 again. He was really hoping everyone would get their S word together and move this along. So you are the leaders, and sometimes you will have to make unpopular decisions, because if you think that in this community everyone's going to come to a consensus, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. So it's unfortunate, but it's on all of you to figure it out. And we all know, and God bless the woman who said, let's get more buses and have it all work out. We all know that's not going to happen. We're not going to get enough bus drivers for everyone to start at the same time. So however it works out, it's on you guys to figure it out, and I hope you do, and I hope it's sooner rather than later, because that awesome kid who dropped the mic and ran out, it's been enough time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Peter Solderich. I live in Haverford. I'm a parent of a second grader at Gladwin and a 4-year-old who will eventually, hopefully, go to Gladwin. I spoke at the last meeting 2 weeks ago to tell you about my family's school day. I'm back to talk a little bit different today. It's kind of fitting to come after someone talking about science, because while I'm not here to talk about delaying secondary start times at all, I support that wholeheartedly. I said that last meeting as well. I am here to talk about the 7:45 start time for elementary students. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of science on the site, on the Google site. I actually work for Google, so I'm very familiar with the technology that was up there before. There was a lot of links to a lot of literature about research for adolescent sleep behavior. Nothing, basically nothing for small children, okay? Last meeting, a speaker came up and cited a particular article, a public radio news story from quoting a Dr. Eric Zhao from Harvard Medical School and Boston Children's Hospital, who was quoted as saying 7:30 is an appropriate start time for school. Actually, if you click through and listen to the audio, he didn't say that. He said 7:30 is an appropriate wake-up time for elementary students. It was misquoted in the article. I urge you to go look at it. I'm going to send you guys a letter this evening or tomorrow with links to everything. The piece is flawed in a number of ways, so if anyone's been relying on that on any side of this debate, they should not. In fact, it's an unserious piece. They interviewed mostly school administration and teachers who were talking about things at elementary school like reduced disciplinary problems, because most of the disciplinary issues happen later in the day. Those problems are still going to happen. They're just not going to happen at school, right? So it solves the school problem. It does not solve the child problem, right? It's later in the day. The piece quoted a single parent with a positive experience who was talking about, well, I was skeptical, but I came around. Well, I looked at that parent's name. I looked at what her occupation was. She's a community engagement coordinator for that school district. That's a very suspicious parent to be quoting in that article, okay? A contemporaneous article just to talk about the rush of decision making from Cape Cod Chronicle, which is their school district's area, made a specific mention that the board, when deciding to put their school times early for elementary students, they decided it in May of 2016 for a September 2017 effective date. They said it wouldn't have been possible to do anything at all without that 15-month period of time to engage the community and work through a lot of these other issues. I feel wholeheartedly for the secondary students who have seen us put in front of them for so long. But the work is not, it's not done. It's not done. And I don't think it needs to happen at the expense of elementary students for which there is no settled science. There is none. We're taking a complete leap of faith there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Spear, Lee Halpern, Angela Levy, Linda Mullins, Amy Noor.
Hello, I'm Jim Spear. I have 2 in high school. I have 1 in 5th grade at Belmont Hills. I live in Narberth. I was on the stakeholders committee last year that examined and ultimately scored and recommended. I was then, and I am now, a big proponent of starting high school later. I think the focus has to be on high school. I had to change up what I was going to say today because I was going to make 3 points and suggestions, but I was happy to hear they were all mentioned and discussed by the board tonight, but I'll mention them anyway. One was, I think it's important to try to get no school to start earlier than 8 to the extent that that's possible. Second, to explore the purchase of a number of buses that would tighten up those bus runs to closer to 30 minutes. And last was to consider starting middle school first. But I feel that we're close to a solution, and the one thing I don't want to happen is that this sort of falls apart, and I feel it's not a time to abandon this process. So the only 2 things I would add that I thought of while I was thinking was that if we go with a start time scenario that's closer to 8:40, and 9:10, those align sort of to what we have now. There's relatively little change. It's 15 and 20-minute adjustments. And I think that might be easier to swallow by the community and easier adjustments for families to make. And the other thing is that if elementary school still starts school at 9-ish, they may not have to make so many adjustments to their family life, and we may be able to start this next year. You know, we may not need that planning period of an additional year. So I would ask the board to consider that, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spear.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lee Halpern. I live in Marion, and I'm the mom of 2 high school juniors. So, like Jim, what I was going to say has changed a little after tonight's meeting, but I still want to give it a little bit of a push. We moved here right before my daughter started 3rd grade. We came from Chicago. Our last school district, our school started at 8. So the joke was our kids got to sleep an hour later. The truth is, with the time difference, it was exact same time, but as a working mom, it was very different for me. I don't know how you guys do it to get your kids to school after 9 o'clock. I was telecommuting after we moved. I was fortunate to be able to kind of shuffle things. It worked. By the time my kids got into 5th grade, the school district hosted Judith Owens to come and speak. And this was spring of 5th grade, and I thought, problem solved. By the time my kids get to high school, this will not be an issue. Well, 5 years later, here we are. Nothing has changed. I have to say that, I don't want to do anything at the expense of the elementary school kids, but I think we are failing across the board. We moved here because it was a leading school district. The school district 5 years ago recognized the need for teens to sleep, recognized the need to change the schedule, and we have done nothing. We've talked, we've studied, we've done nothing. I think it's just so the elementary school people understand what high school is like. Our bus stop pickup is officially 6:38 a.m. So for my kids to get out to the bus, they really need to leave the house at about 6:20, which means to get up at about 5:30, 5:45, and scramble to get there. I drive them every single day because they can leave the house at 7 after 10 or 10 after 7 and get here in time. But if I didn't have the luxury of being able to drive them every day, they would be out at that bus a little
Pre-dawn hours, they're there. Kids are there every single day. It happens. These high school kids have 4 to 6 hours of homework regularly. This happens every single day. My daughter spoke and said, we were laughing. If she got the prescribed amount of sleep, she would have been in bed before this meeting got started. So, while I don't believe shuffling the puck and taking it out on some other group of kids, whether it be elementary school or middle schools, is a solution at all, I do believe we need to do something. I do believe that the board needs to have a sense of urgency. I do believe they need to re-examine the possibility of doing something for 2020. Last year, we sat here and talked about, what if we just moved the whole schedule back 20 minutes? And nothing has happened since. So, in the words of Judith Owens, to do nothing is to do harm.
Thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate it.
Angela, was she here? Okay, we have Allevi, A-L-L-E-V-I. All right, she's not here. Linda Mullins, Amy Noor, Carney Stricker, Judith Miller, Jamie Thurber, and Gary, maybe, Halpern.
Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Linda Mullins, and I'm the mother of a first grader and a preschooler. I'm also a school psychologist, child advocate, and have become a leader in our community. And thank you, everyone who showed up here tonight to support us. So what I have planned is, I'm speaking with Amy Noor. I represent All Kids Need Sleep, and she represents Healthy School Start Times. And after hearing some of the comments tonight, as I sat here, what I heard is that 7:45 does not work for elementary school, which we've been fighting for, and the current high school start time does not work. So how can we make it work for all of us, right? We have come together to form one large group in order to represent our respective communities. And we believe while the status quo of current start times for high schoolers is not acceptable, neither is the proposed school start time for elementary, which based on the presentation, it was found that, it really isn't acceptable. We can debate the specifics, but what we all want is what's best for our children here. Our current division of our community is not productive, and when we all get along and work together with one common goal, then progress can be made. I also stand here as an advocate for all children. I would be remiss if I did not mention the outpour from parents who were thrilled that last meeting I spoke to the significant issues about students with disabilities. Another gentleman brought it up, but we need to remember those students. All kids need sleep, and for the little ones, they are developing coping skills and learning strategies in elementary school, so when they face bigger challenges in middle and high, they have a foundation and a toolbox to use. Without the recommended 9 to 12 hours of sleep in elementary school, we're setting them up for failure. Our children in high school are currently suffering from depression, chronic fatigue, absenteeism due to sickness, and suicidal ideation. While later high school start times may not solve these problems, the evidence is clear that later high school start times are correlated to fewer of these concerns. But shifting the sleep deprivation to the 3,700 elementary students does not work either, as we've learned. All school hours should allow all of our children adequate sleep. We believe having the community come together to push for a solution that we can all agree upon is best practice. The committee formed last spring determined the two-tier model was best. We realized the option was eliminated due to the estimated increase in buses and financial implications. However, we believe that through more creative exploration, another solution may be found. We together believe that we can reach our goal that all kids need sleep. We hope you understand that we have come here in unity and won't back down until all of our children are healthy, both physically and mentally. And now I'm going to turn it over to Amy for some suggestions.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Noor. I live in Penn Valley. I have 3 children. They've all graduated from the district. My twins came in when the first group came here in 1999 with Penn sleep experts to ask for later start times. They're 26. My daughter was in middle school when Judith Owens came in 2014 to talk about the science behind the recommendation for later start times. I appreciate the presentation here tonight. I'm very concerned about the continued risk that has not really been the focus of this presentation on our high school students. It's been every single day for all of these decades. The research has been around for decades and decades, way before the 2014 AAP recommendation. And we say we're concerned, but we haven't done anything to change the high school start times, and they are suffering every day. There's a lot of risk. We heard from the one student talking about drowsy driving. The evidence is there. We must do something. And maybe it's as much until we figure out the best solution that we do a 30-minute push for all levels to alleviate that stress and incredible accumulated sleep deprivation for our high school students. So with Linda this is what I was going to say, from All Kids Need Sleep, we do have some suggestions. We met with respective members of our group, about 20 of us last week, and there are 4 things that we agreed on and we wanted to relay to the board. One is the status quo is unacceptable. It's a well-documented and urgent public health matter, the high school sleep deprivation for our students. And as Dr. Owens said, to do nothing is to do harm. We really would like you to creatively explore the 2-tier option for the public schools, which was recommended. It was the first choice at the Community Advisory Committee. I know that you had mentioned, Mr. Copeland, that MIT had rejected the 2-tier model. We would like to see what that looked like. We were thinking of and this has been submitted to the board by a number of us, perhaps a 3rd tier for the independent schools and splitting the start times for the elementary and middle schools. For example, 3 elementary schools and 3 middle schools start at one time, 3 elementary and 2 high schools start at another. Not necessarily that, but something creative. Look into it. Give them a blank slate and let them start from the beginning and see how we could make this work. And we would like, in addition to that being explored, the results fully shared with the community. But if that 2-tier option proves undoable, then we would like you to look at the possibility of shortening the 40-minute gap between tiers to 30 minutes, such as 8:15, 8:45, 9:15, or similar start schedule. I know Mr. Lill mentioned something about that being explored with 35 extra buses. We'd like to see what was explored, see the data, share it all with the community. So many smart people in this community, they can comment on what has been disclosed. Finally, all of these proposed solutions will require additional buses, creativity, and doing things differently. We believe that 10 to 15 additional buses are affordable either through purchasing or through leasing, as well as the use of vans and other alternatives to full-size buses. With a change in start times geared toward enhanced student health and safety, Lmsb can be a leader in this effort and an example for other districts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Noor.
Good evening. Carrie Stricker, member of the Stakeholder Committee, parent of an elementary, soon-to-be middle school student, and your scientist, PhD. I made comments at the last meeting. Tonight, my comments will have a little bit of a different tone given my disappointment in the closing recommendation presented by Trigo Ed. Specifically reading from the slide of which I took a picture, continue with a comprehensive analysis of the modified reorder and conduct a risk analysis of not making a change. My jaw honestly dropped to see those 2 conclusions from Trigo Ed. It's hard for me not to speak emotionally at this moment, but it is also hard for me not to feel that there is not a firm commitment of the district, and Mr. Copeland, as the superintendent of the district, you represent that overall, that there's not a commitment to finding a solution. If we do one more risk analysis and one more process-driven analysis of all the risks and issues at hand, rather than turning that energy towards solution finding, I don't know that this entire community of stakeholders can manage that, and I think the board should be looking at the cost that's being spent in risk analysis rather than solution finding. I think it is, I don't want you to lose the fact, I will say that this is my first experience volunteering in any way, shape, or form for the district. And I came in and I'm looking at Dr. Paul. I think, Dr. Paul, as I've said before, I think one of the reasons why I was chosen may have been because, I spoke about my ability to find, I'm a convener, I'm a I forget the formal term, but I like to create consensus, but I also, look very critically at data as a scientist. I'm now very disappointed in my experience serving on a committee and finding it very difficult to think about doing so again because of this, what feels like a problem orientation rather than a solution orientation. And the final point to say on that second point of that slide, conduct a risk analysis of not making a change. That's an insult to the high school students who spoke tonight. That's an insult to the stakeholder committee members who were asked to give what their values were and then rate a priori determined models on those values and then reject the model they rated the highest, saying it's simply not feasible. So thank you for allowing me the privilege of speaking and serving.
So give me one moment. So I do appreciate, Ms. Strickland, your serving on the committee and the amount of time that you spent in all of this. And I have to say, it's unfortunate that those are your feelings, and I respect that those are your feelings, but I do have to stop and say that it is under Superintendent Copeland's leadership that we have had an incredibly thorough process, and that if we had just snapped our fingers, which is what a group of people wanted us to do, we then would have had an enormous number of elementary parents who would have been unable to actually deal with the changes that was implemented. So I understand people's frustration. I have been hearing about these issues for a long time. We've been studying these issues for a long time. We created a strategic plan, which I know some people felt we should have just dealt with sleep and not done the strategic plan, but we created as a community a very far-reaching strategic plan to deal with a lot of the issues that many of our students and parents are bringing up. Because sleep is an enormously important issue, but as we've heard, one part of an issue that has to do with all kinds of issues around how many AP classes we allow our students to take, and how is it that we prioritize. We're hearing people want to come home after work and just hang out with their kids, and we know our kids are super stressed. In fact, Superintendent Copeland asked us to ask for the funds to do those studies that show that our community, as compared to similar types of communities, our kids are doing even more than in many other similarly situated communities. So I think that we all are extremely concerned about our children. I think everybody is extremely concerned about kids in this community, and I understand people's frustrations, but and people can be very, very frustrated with this board, and I imagine many people are very frustrated with this board. But I do want to point out that Superintendent Copeland has provided tremendous leadership on this issue, and to continue asking for the resources to move this forward in a way that is actually dealing with not just our aspirations, but also implementation, because they have to be able to implement the plan. The plan has to be able to be implemented. And so I just want to, again, appreciate everybody. I understand people's frustrations. I just want to make sure that the frustrations are coming, where they're directed. And frankly, the board has been asking Superintendent Copeland to be making sure that we have as much community input as possible and an ability to do a successful implementation, which is going to be an enormously difficult, complicated, as we're changing the entire way our community is organized. And we've had this happen in other districts. I am hopeful that we're going to be able to figure this out and do it right. And I am very much aware of the fact that the high school kids are, in fact, waiting. I have my own kids as well, as do all of us here. Most of us have high school kids, so we're very aware of these issues. So I just want to take a step back and just appreciate the amount of work that's being done by the administration under the direction of the board to do this as thorough way as possible. And I think I've now gone over my 3 minutes and should allow somebody else to speak.
Judith? Oh, okay.
Hi, my name is Judith Miller. I'm from Penn Valley, and I have 2 daughters that graduated from Harriton. I had prepared remarks, but the messages have made me think of other ideas. I think it's really interesting to think about starting all the schools later and in unison. And one of the ways to maybe accomplish that is to revisit the idea of shared buses across grades. We heard a beautiful presentation from the Penn students about their colonies and the benefits of across grade interactions. And I know there are elementary parents who may be incredibly nervous about high school students with their kids. We have some of the nicest high school students in the entire universe, and we have strong leaders in our high school community. They could be providing supervision at the bus stops, and they could be assigned roles on the bus to help the younger students, and it could be an item that they're able to put on their college applications for a leadership role that they took. It could help alleviate some of the transportation issues and also get everyone to school at a later time, and I think that would be something worth considering.
Thank you for your comments.
Jamie?
My name is Jamie Thurber. I live in Bryn Mawr, and I'm the mother of a Gladwin Elementary 3rd grader, 1st grader, and a 16-month-old future student who also happens to have Down syndrome. I'm here to speak in support of a later start time for high school students and in strong opposition to the 7:45 a.m. start time for elementary school students. As the district has accurately identified, research supports a later start time for adolescents. What I hope the board keeps in mind is that there is equally compelling research that speaks to the need for 9 to 12 hours of sleep for elementary-aged children. The impacts of sleep deprivation on small children, both typically developing and those with disabilities, are profound. The AAP recommends elementary-aged children receive 9 to 12 hours of sleep. The National Down Syndrome Society recommends 10 to 11 hours for children with Down syndrome. My school-aged children go to bed no later than 9 p.m. in order for them to receive the 10 to 11 hours they require. It's ugly if that does not happen. Most nights, to our 3rd graders' dismay, bedtime is 8 p.m. Based on our current bus schedule, our new pickup time would be 7 a.m. To accommodate that time, we would need to move up our children's bedtime to 7, no later than 8 p.m. This would necessitate that we choose between sacrificing sleep, physical activity, or time in our community. While after-school sports may be viewed as optional, we have made the decision to enroll our children in selective sports so as not to overschedule them, and dance after observing the alarming lack of physical activity they experience during the school day. Our other evening commitments include religious education and time in that community. This proposal will mean that we need to remove physical activity, our church community, or we will knowingly deprive our children of sleep. An additional concern for our family and other families with children with special needs is that this exacerbates already challenged sleep. We are already struggling to get our 16-month-old to get the sleep she needs in order to learn and develop. As she approaches the elementary age, we foresee this presenting additional hurdles for her. She already has enough barriers and hurdles. To have school deprive her of the sleep that she needs, starting next year when she has to get up with her older siblings to get them to the bus stop, and then extending into her school years, is very troubling. I encourage the district to consider alternatives that have the best interests in mind of all students and all children who may not be of school age yet. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Corey Halpern, Kimberly Neff, Ben. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Corey Halpern. I live in Marion Station, and I have 2 daughters who are juniors at Lower Marion High School. I had prepared remarks, which now I'm throwing away because I too am stunned by the recommendation from the consultants and find it completely unacceptable. And frankly, with all due respect to the board, who I know have worked hard on this, what I'm hearing are nothing but excuses year after year. We moved here a number of years ago, was told the board was working on this several years ago. Still nothing has happened. I came before this board over a year ago. We've been faced with overwhelming science, overwhelming medical opinion from the AMA, Center for Disease Control, Association of Pediatrics. The science is uncontroverted, and the board still does nothing. I came back over a year ago and pleaded with the board to look at even doing a 15-minute push for all students for 2019-2020. That was, we couldn't possibly do that, the logistics were too much. Now it's a year later, you hired consultants who are now recommending you push it off another year. It's not acceptable anymore. No plan will be perfect. Sacrifices are going to have to be made, whether it's by parents of elementary students, middle school students, or high school students. But you guys are in a position and you've got to make a decision. And if you keep putting this off, each year, as the other student pointed out, there's several hundred students that are not going to have the benefits of this. And it's time to stop putting it off. I don't know why you can't even do a push next year, 15, 20 minutes, a half-hour push, until you can find a solution. And there is no perfect solution, and people are going to have to make sacrifices, but you also have to look at the overwhelming medical opinions here and science opinions from pediatricians throughout the world. Other schools like Radnor, many other schools throughout the country have made these changes in a lot less time than it's taken you guys to have studies and put it off for another year. And enough's enough. You guys have got to make the hard decisions, and nothing's going to be perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Kimberly Neff? Nope. Ben, I think it's Mella. Yes. Amanda Olson, Lisa Prosnitz, Marie Conti, George Park. Okay, then we have Crystal, Zhao, Kara, Julie, Esther, Kim, Paul, Brandeis, and Indira.
Yes. Hi, my name is Amanda Olson. I am the mother of 2 children, both in elementary school. One will be in 5th grade next year. So I'm of that sort of almost middle school parent moving into high school. I agree that the high school start time does need to be shifted to a later time. And I'm pleased that we've all recognized that putting that on elementary is not ideal. I would urge the board to explore a creative busing option and look into shortening at least one of the busings between the schools to 30 minutes. Maybe not both, because that might be too expensive, but maybe we can just shorten one of the bus situations. I feel like, and I know it might not be popular, but middle school already starts, I believe it's 8:05, if I'm correct, 8:15. I always felt like it made sense that the middle school started first at 8 o'clock. They are a bit more self-sufficient than elementary school students, and they can get out of school early for their sports, and then they can go home. They can let themselves in. Elementary school students can't do that, as we all know. And then starting high school 40 minutes later at 8:40, which gives you the 40-minute time that's required, and then doing elementary school at 8:10. So that's where you're going to have to find that 30-minute time frame between the high school start time and the elementary school. And I think with a little bit of creativity, that's something that can be done by either really looking at our busing situation, maybe expanding the walking zone to a little over a mile. I don't know if that's doable. And maybe shortening some of the buses where we're using vans or not as expensive busing large buses. I wonder if that's something that you guys would consider, is exploring the transportation option, because that seems to be the main problem that we have. I mean, everybody wants our kids to start after 8. Nobody wants 7:45. So how can we make that possible and not go over budget? I don't know what the budget is, but it seems like doing half hour between each is too much money. So can we just do one of the situations a half hour? Is there any thought of that?
We're looking at all kinds of transportation, but we don't go back and forth on these. So we're taking your comments and we'll be able to get back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Lisa Prosnetz, Penn Valley. Tonight I speak on behalf of myself, but I serve as the ISC Wellness Coordinator. And in that role, I've been speaking with parents from grades K through 12 and with teachers and administrators about our high school start times, and also served on the advisory committee. When I started advocating, I knew that a 7:30 start time would present a huge challenge for my family. What I didn't fully comprehend was what waking up at 6 a.m. was doing to our children's brains and bodies day after day. I started meeting with doctors, psychologists, and friends and reading validated studies. I kept hearing about exhausted, overworked, stressed out, anxious kids who were more likely to be making bad decisions, getting injured, gaining weight, and driving drowsy as a result of this daily sleep debt imposed by the 7:30 a.m. high school start time. With the ability to achieve at least the minimum 8 hours of recommended sleep, our teens would be better able to cope with the many challenges of, and for all too many, as the Challenge Success Survey showed, the stresses of a Lower Merion High School experience. As Dr. Judith Owens said, to do nothing is to do harm. As a school board, many of you who were elected in 2017 said that you expected implementation of later secondary school start times within 2 to 3 years. You said that the science was understood and that a change in school start times was a matter of implementation and logistics. This coming fall, we will be at the 3-year mark. I stand here today to say that our students, especially our current sophomores and juniors, deserve your immediate attention. Any change is going to be hard, even when advocating for healthier children. But we all need to take a deep breath and do what's right, and for that, we should be looking to science. This administration should be proud of the fact that when it brought together representatives from across our community, we came to place, this is the advisory task force, we came to place the highest value in our students' learning engagement, health and wellness, and safety. It is because of this that I strongly urge the district, regardless of whichever plan the board decides upon, if implementation is not to occur in the fall of 2020, that the board push forward all school start times by 30 minutes as an imperfect but a guaranteed interim solution to alleviate the accumulation of sleep debt our teens experience each week. Again, to do nothing is to do harm.
Thank you very much.
Marie?
Thank you for your service on the
Marie
committee.
Conti.
I'm Marie Conti. I'm the head of school at the Wetherill School in Gladwin, Pennsylvania. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and for tonight's presentation and efforts to address alternatives. And thank you for the district's due diligence on the matter of the change in school start and end times. I'm also speaking on behalf of the Wetherill Board of Directors, most of whom had to leave. For many of the 44 years of our school's existence, we have provided a high-quality afternoon kindergarten program to Lmsb families. An average of 27 children are served by this program, and it's been in high demand. The proposed change from the October meeting in schedule and the timing of the final decision for this proposal has made our planning for the next school year very challenging. I've been touring parents but can't tell them what time their children might arrive or leave my school, nor what their tuition will be because I don't know how long that period of time will be. The current structure of our morning and afternoon programs does not allow us to accommodate children arriving earlier in the day to our school unless we make some significant logistical changes in all of our programs, including our morning preschool. We would greatly appreciate, and I know this won't be popular with everyone who's been waiting for this for many years, but at least a year to investigate alternatives to our schedule to enable the Wetherill School to continue to accommodate children who arrive after the AM kindergarten program at GES and other schools in the district. Please be aware of these difficulties that October's proposal of the change in schedule presents to our school's planning and enrollment for 2021. I agree with all of the well-researched points presented in the All Kids Need Sleep petition letter and presented by various parents and constituents of the school district over the past several months. I've been to most of the community hearing meetings, and I agree with every comment that I've heard. As an educator for over 40 years and parent of a 33-year-old, grandmother of a 1-year-old, I'm fully aware of the sleep needs of children of all ages. The proposed October schedule does not accommodate the needs of all children and is especially detrimental to the health and safety of elementary-age children. I've seen growth in anxiety in children as young as preschool age over the past decade, and the lack of sleep will continue to exacerbate this problem. I respectfully request that the Lmsb School Board and Administration review alternative schedules to allow for additional sleep hours for the youngest children, as well as the high school and middle school students of the district, and to allow adequate time for the Wetherill School and members of the community to plan for the change appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
George Park, Crystal Zhao, Kara, Julie, Esther Kim.
Great. I'm George Park from Bala-Cynwyd. In December 2019, I identified top 28 school districts from the niche.com, a school district information site, and it provides a national ranking of districts across the states. Excluding 7 high school-only districts, the list was shortened into top 21 school districts of the United States which operate elementary school. Then I did survey of school start times through internet search and phone calls. Here I want to share some of the important findings with everyone. And this was included actually in the concerned parents letter signed by about 1,000 people and also shared with the board earlier. First, among the top 21 school districts which operate elementary schools, only 3 districts start their elementary schools before 8 in the morning. Moreover, 8:25 appears to be the earliest start time among the districts which starts elementary school after 8 in the morning. Another interesting observation is that all mainline districts are parts of this list, 21 school districts, top 21 nationally. LMSD ranked at 21st, Radnor ranked at 15th, and T at 8th. And I must mention that Radnor and T recently changed their start times for the same sleep deprivation concern. Radnor changed their elementary school start time from 9 to 9:07, and T changed it from 8:45 to 9:10. It's very similar to our current operating schedule for elementary schools. LMSD is moving away from the standard pursued by the majority of the top districts of the United States, including other mainline districts. Yet I believe LMSD has not been able to provide compelling reasons to do so. And there are many legitimate and unresolved concerns on the youngest kids. My last comment, I recognize that the risk analysis presented today did not mention the risks discussed comprehensively in the concerned parents' letter signed by about 1,000 people. I feel surprised, and in fact, I feel a bit scared on that fact. Please pay more attention to the real concerns and the risks that the parents think. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Crystal Zhou. I live in Bala-Cynwyd. I have a 8 years old and a 5 years old. My top concern of having elementary school at starting at 7:45 is losing family time. This just doesn't work for working parents. It's not about inconvenience. It simply just doesn't work. So the student has to leave home at like 6:30 in the morning and stay in the school in the after school, and then they don't get home until 6 o'clock at night. It's really long time for young children first, and then when they get to school, they really have to go to bed at 8 o'clock in order to get enough sleep. And there's not much time left for them to do homework or any extracurricular activities. So if they need help from the parents on their schoolwork, there's just no time left. My son, he plays violin. He started playing violin since the age of 4, and he has played it for 4 years. Right now, he practices violin 1 hour every day. He's not like the child that I have to push him to play. He really loves playing violin. So, but if the school really starts at 7:45, and then he will have to face the dilemma that he either stop playing violin to get enough sleep, or if he continue his violin playing, then he won't get enough sleep for his brain to develop. And I'm just curious because when I went to the public hearing session, the school district shared one push model, which has school starts at 8 o'clock for high school students, and then 8:45 for middle school, and then 9:30 for elementary school. It's not clear for me why that model doesn't work.
Thank you very much for your
I
comment.
just wonder if any member from the district, from the school district, can answer that question.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your comments.
Okay, Kara, Julie, Esther Kim.
My name's Esther Kim.
I think you need to move your mic down, sorry. I would have the same issue.
Hello, my name is Esther Kim. I have a son at Welsh Valley. I'm going to make what may be considered a radical recommendation. Here goes. I recommend that the final decision for the proposal for the new start times be determined by a school district-wide vote and not be determined by a vote of only 9 people on the school board, with all due respect. For example, each household listed for a student could have 1 vote, that's just an example, which is better than no vote. This is the only fair way to take action on the proposal for the following reasons, in my opinion. There is no way the 9 members of the school board can know what's best for each individual household. We can probably all agree that the most important committee, which has the most accurate information about whether a proposal will work for each family, is each family. I realize the American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC recommend that school starts later than 8:30 a.m. for teens because the, quote, onset of sleepiness is later in the evening, about 11 p.m. for teens. However, these recommendations do not address the specific cases of all the families in our district. For example, my 8th grader can fall asleep before 11 p.m. when we have a cutoff time for screen time before 11 p.m., and the teachers have not given an overload of homework. Also, my son dreads the proposed plan of getting home more than an hour later with a longer bus ride home. The new dismissal time of 3:30 p.m. will have high school buses running into significantly more traffic coming home from Harriton at that time of day. I understand how the proposed start times do not benefit the elementary school kids. My point is that each family is the best judge of whether the proposal on new start times will work for their family. So I recommend the fair way to act on this or future proposals will to be let all households have a vote instead of having the school board delay making a decision for us. And one last thing, the lack of sleep routines in this district is a problem that will not be fixed by changing the start times alone. The principals and teachers should be able to update their lesson plans to incorporate the concept that an extra hour or more of sleep at night will be more effective in helping students learn instead of extra hours of homework at night. The ongoing complaints about homework overload and the related stress have not been resolved by the administration, which are the other gorillas in the room causing students to lose sleep. So please address those issues along with the start times. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Paul Brandis? Okay. Indira?
Hi, thank you. Our community is a couple hundred years old. I didn't look up the exact date, but it's old. I was talking to a friend who is now 60 years old, and she's a product of the Lower Merion public education system. She told me that there was actually a time when girls in Lower Merion schools were not allowed to wear pants to school. There was a time when parents had to band together to grant permission for their daughters to wear pants. There was pushback. A lot of parents asked the question, how will girls know they're girls if they aren't wearing a dress? A lot of people said, why can't we do it the way we're already doing it? It's working just fine for them. In response to a bunch of parents speaking out, Lower Merion eventually passed a law to let girls wear pants. It was the end of an era because parents spoke up. We see this again and again. There was one school in Lower Merion at one time that was just for black kids until integration happened because parents spoke up. We have a huge national epidemic of children dying in drunk driving accidents at one point until Mothers Against Drunk Driving came together and lobbied for change, and the epidemic was quelled because parents spoke up. We had corporal punishment allowed in schools, and then it was stopped when communities came together. They responded to the science that showed the corporal punishment does harm. We live in a community that has again and again and again taken on contentious issues and implemented change anyway. So now we come to the issue of school start times and child sleep deprivation for the sake of finances and buses and schedules and sports and childcare. As we heard today, the whole reason we're here at all is because our high schoolers are already currently daily suffering. Radnor saw this and took action already, as have over 500 different districts around the country. California is taking this on statewide. Tonight, as we sit here debating, I just got word that the school board at Hampton Township, just outside of Pittsburgh, voted to delay start times for their high schoolers. We can put forward a proposal and another and another and another and line up lots of predictions about why they'll fail. Proposals that default to delayed action or inaction. We can go on this way for more years. Most kids will survive whatever cruel schedule we give them. Is that what we're committed to? Children just surviving? Isn't that the lowest level of service for our children, that they survive? I didn't come here to have my kids just survive, and neither did any of you. Like Carrie, I'm heartbroken by the recommendation to wait and a choice to spend more time and more money on more analysis. I am a mother whose child is affected by this right now. As Teddy Roosevelt said, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing, and the worst thing to do is nothing. To do nothing is to do harm. Be brave, take action now. Let them sleep.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Okay, we have Letty Switzer, Wenli Uyang, Nancy P. Nikos Barvers, Jeff Brody, Sarah Thomas, Diane Di Bonaventuro. Any of those people here? Okay. Ning Hang, I can't read the last name, Valentina, and Amy Krinsky.
All right, I know it's 11 o'clock at night. I'm Letty Switzer. I'm the mom of a couple of, an elementary schooler and a preschooler. I agree that continuing the status quo is not a solution. I also feel that moving to a 7:45 start time for either elementary or middle school is not a solution either, considering half of American children are already sleep deprived without even having that early of a school start time. I would also like us to think about who's most impacted by early school start times, and those children would be low-income children as well as children who have disabilities. Low-income children and children with special needs are already at much higher risk for sleep deprivation, sleep disturbances, and sleep disorders. And they're already likely to encounter barriers to their education and their academic success. So I would say that any proposal put forward should take into account our most vulnerable populations. And I agree with some of the other thoughts on more flexible, interesting busing solutions, such as bus sharing, perhaps having the younger students be in like one section of the bus, so maybe like parents would be more concerned if their kids were in it. Whatever, there are a lot of different ideas that I heard tonight that I thought could be interesting, tightening up schedules, or pushing everything back, and I would be in favor of any of those things over doing nothing or putting any children at 7:45 in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Wenley, Nancy P., Nikos. Okay, yay.
So good evening. My name is Nikos Parveris. I live in Balak Unit. I have two young boys. I'm a professor of physics, doing nuclear physics at Temple. So that's my introduction. So I came across recently one study which basically quantifies common sense, parent involvement and student academic performance. In elementary school, I sent the board earlier the paper a few years ago. Conclusions, findings from the present study demonstrated that increased parent involvement was significantly related to increased academic performance measured by both standardized achievement test and teaching ratings of the child's classroom academic performance. And this is widely accepted by a dozen other studies quoted in this paper that go back 35 years ago. The influence of parent involvement on academic success has not only been noted among researchers, but also among policymakers. That's how we make policy, to improve things, right? A second paper, parent involvement promotes better social skills, fewer problem behaviors. Now, I'm coming back from Temple at 6 o'clock. My wife is also faculty at Temple. We come together. At that time, we have to feed our kids and send them to bed if the schedule changes. So for the 4 years of my first boy and for the 4 years of my second boy, I will not be able to get involved at all with his educational process. I will not be able to help him with homework, interact with him, transfer creativity. I won't be able to do any of these things. There are 15 pages or so in this paper, charts, it's very well documented. Correlation parameters have been quantified. So if you remove me out of my kids' equation, academic performance is quantified, goes down. Okay? How is this factored into your risk analysis? This is the heart of the academic mission of education. This collapses here before we go to if an athlete is going to miss one class. Here things collapse. This is our mission. I did not see this up there. As another parent said, these are critical parameters that are not there. How are these things factored in? I want to compliment you for a very nice job and thorough job. Some things don't seem to be working. You have to take a step back, as I would say to one of my 100 students that I have this semester. You're doing a good job. You haven't solved the problem yet. All kids need sleep, not elementary only. Why don't we push things by 15 or 20 minutes or so? Shifting things is not as perturbative. I'm sorry to take your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate you hanging in this long. Thank you.
Jeff?
Jeff Brody, Balakin with Pennsylvania. Go Owls, just saying.
I'm not going to take all 3 minutes. I'm going to let everyone know that at BC tomorrow, we've got a Freedom Tournament. It's students and faculty playing each other. It's a fundraiser for CHOP. Come out. My son's doing it. I'm excited. But in all seriousness, thank you so much. I actually really enjoyed the presentation. I thought the level of detail of the presentation tonight was nice. I'd like to see more of that level of detail as we move forward in this conversation. I also appreciate, I appreciate the comments by some of the board members really trying to dig into that 30-minute route. And I just want to spend 10 seconds on that because I really do think there's a sweet spot with those 30 minutes. And as was previously said, an 8:15, 8:45, 9:15-ish start, that means that the first bus is picking up at 7:45. We just gave that student 45 minutes more sleep. Isn't that what we're about? Trying to maximize sleep? We just added 45 minutes to that person, to that student, to all those students. So I really hope and urge and encourage that we can maybe dive a little deeper into that. And I thank the board members who've mentioned that. Also, I was walking up to save some time here. A parent said, can we have families opt out of busing? I don't know the legal ramifications. I know there's laws around busing. But if families can opt out for the whole school year, right, maybe that can help alleviate some seats on seats, and it can also help alleviate some of that other times. Just throwing it out there. Creativity. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Sarah?
Hi. Sarah Thomas, Winwood. I have a toddler who will be a Penguin kindergartner in a few years. I was planning to start by speaking about the 7:45 start time and how it would affect kindergarten students. But in light of the new recommendation, I'm going to skip ahead a bit, and in light of the time. I appreciate the information shared tonight and the new recommendation to have middle school start first, followed by high school, and then elementary. I also agree with the statements that have been made regarding having no students start school prior to 8 a.m. I want to ask that in considering a new recommendation, we not only think about the next few years, but the future as well, and the new middle school that is being built. My understanding is that this new middle school will pull students from Penguin and Gladwin Elementary. We need to think about bus routes for this middle school as well, and making sure that students who will be traveling across the township from the Penguin area to the new middle school will not be on the bus for longer than the current routes. Currently, I live 9 minutes from Ballackinwood Middle School and 17 minutes from the site of the new middle school. I am concerned that if we do not reduce the time of the bus routes, then my child will possibly be on a bus for longer than 45 minutes once he gets to middle school. We need to make sure we are thinking about the future and how changes that we make now will affect our current K-5 and 6-8 school structures, as well as the future K-4 and 5-8 structure. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Lin Hung, Valentina, sorry, I can't read the last name, Amy Krinsky, Cheryl Masterman, Sasha Kaufner, Emily. All right, is Cheryl?
I guess so.
Yep.
I was going to say good evening, but it's kind of good night. Cheryl Masterman, Villanova, member at large for the ISC, but I'm speaking as a parent of 2 high schoolers at Harriton High School. I definitely agree that students should not start school before 8 a.m. And the risk of the status quo is significant. There's a couple of other things that I'd like to add to the paralysis of analysis for the analysis risk assessment. Currently, I don't think it's been mentioned, our high school swim teams all share this pool here at Lower Merion. When one of our high school teams has a home meet, the other team has to start swim practice at 5:15 in the morning. Coming from Harriton, that means my son has to get up at 4:30 in the morning. That is 2 hours ahead of what your elementary parents are saying you need to do for your kids. It's unacceptable. if we were able to shift the high school time, they could get an extra hour of sleep, possibly even an hour and a half of sleep. But I don't think we've thought about that. And that affects potentially 120 students because there's 60 kids on each high school swim team, 60 spots at least. And then the other parent just before me was talking about the new middle school. And I think we have to also realize that the status quo would mean that elementary school kids would be K through 4, and then 5th graders would be part of the secondary school system. So the later start time that elementary school parents would be fighting for would be for 4 years, while the earlier status quo start time we have right now would last for 8 years. And you really have to keep that in mind. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sasha?
Hi, Sasha Coffiner, Winwood. I'm the parent of 2 Penwyn Elementary School students. I came here prepared to speak against the earlier start time for elementary school, but in view of the new proposal, I will also speak against these earlier start times for middle school as well. Being in Penwyn, we have the privilege of being in a local community close to our elementary school. This won't be the case when our kids are being bused to the new middle school. And what I envision is a nightmare, having to get my kids to school at 7:50 as an elementary school parent, could be even more of a nightmare doing the same thing for middle school when my kids are going to be spending a half an hour on a bus. I think that what's important to realize here is that all children need sleep. There's certainly science that supports the later start time for high school students, and I appreciate that, but the burden should not be shifted to elementary school students or middle school students. Students should not have to get to school at a time that would be unacceptable for most adults to have to start work. I also think that it's problematic saying to elementary school families, you can just put your kids to bed earlier. That's not always a reality. Not all children are going to be able to regulate their clocks to go to bed at a time that just doesn't work for them. I can speak with respect to my children. I wake up for school every morning at 7:30. They go to bed, they just do not go to sleep until 8:30 at night, no matter what I do. That's just their rhythm. And so I cannot imagine what it would be like to be dragging them out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning. I think that the focus needs to be on busing. Yes, it is time for the district to make a decision. I think that it would be unfair to the high school parents to keep delaying and delaying and delaying. But keep in mind that elementary school and middle school parents are only coming to the table now because we didn't know that our kids were on the table for getting a earlier start time until this new proposal came out. So I think that the focus really needs to be on busing. We need to be a 2-tier bus system, and the solutions that need to be put forward should be bus-oriented, and I encourage the district to work on exploring bus solutions that can allow all children to get sleep. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Emily Bootsinis, I think.
Hi, I'm Emily Bootsinis, and I live in Winwood, and I have 3 children. 2 are at Penn Valley. I have a first grader and a kindergartner, and it's been a long night, and I think we're all tired. So imagine having a 7:45 start time and kindergarten students, elementary students, feeling like this every day. It's criminal. My kids get up maybe around 7:30, and we barely get out of the house, barely make it to school on time. And, at that rate, they're going to start racing to eat breakfast, and kids need sleep. They need to grow. They need to be able to focus in school, and without sleep, they can't do those things. I'm just going to talk personally about a couple things because a lot of the things I was thinking most people said, but I stay home and I take care of the children, but my husband works normal hours. But if they had to get up or be at school for 7:45, my husband would never see the children until the weekend, because by the time he leaves in the morning and comes home, he reads them stories at night. he would like to see them, you know? And when you think about it, it just shortens everybody's time, and it's awful. There's no reason for that. And in the morning, my kids sit down and have breakfast. I don't want them racing. I don't want them racing through dinner to be able to go to bed early enough so they can get up in the dark for school. And it just sets up bad habits for life, unhealthy eating habits too. And I just think it's an awful idea, and something has to be figured out. And, you know, I have confidence that, you know, we can all figure something out together. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Tracy Spivak, excuse me. She won.
So I'm speaking at 11:20, and I'm feeling about as popular speaking this late as when I was speaking at a conference last year in Las Vegas at 4 o'clock, and no one really wanted to hear it, but I feel really passionate about it, so I'm going to speak up. My name is Amy Krimsky. I'm a mom of a 10th grader at Lower Merion, right here, and a 6th grader at BC. You've heard a lot of words tonight. I have two more, which is believe science. I believe we can all agree on one thing, which is that our high schoolers are suffering. What we disagree on, obviously, is the solution. I've sat through several listening meetings and school board meetings and been distressed by a lot of the things that I've heard. Here are some quotes I jotted down at the time. Teenagers today aren't getting enough sleep since they're gaming or on social media. It's their fault. High schoolers aren't getting enough sleep because high school parents aren't disciplining their kids. We're doing this too quickly. We need to study it more, even though, as we all know, this issue has been studied for many years. Believe science. It was hard for me to imagine when my son, who's in 10th grade now, was in 4th grade, and Amy, you're friends with Abby on my street, and Abby had said to me how hard it was for her kid, who now is in her mid-20s, and how difficult it was. And I just couldn't really imagine what that would be like. And yet I should have, because I was one of the high schoolers that really struggled with getting up. My family stories are legendary, with me having 6 alarm clocks around my room, my mom throwing water in my face, lifting up the mattress because I couldn't get up. And yet a few years later, I'm a professional in New York after college, and I have no problem getting up. We didn't know then the science. We didn't know what that was. Now we do. Now we know the reason for it. My son, like a lot of the kids here, takes all AP and honors classes. He plays multiple sports. He is so sleep deprived sometimes that I worry for his health. I fly a lot for work. I travel regularly, often to California. 2 weeks ago, I was coming back from California, and American Airlines changed their time, so I landed at 5 a.m., and I was really excited because I would see him when he was up at 6 a.m. So I get home, and I was telling him how exhausted I was, that I was having trouble kind of processing. And he goes, "That's how I feel every day. I feel chronically jet-lagged. It is wrong for us to do nothing for these kids. It is absolutely unethical." I think a few things have been good about this process. More civic engagement. You on the board have stepped up years ago, and we appreciate it. I think this has forced the rest of us to step up. I just urge you to believe the science and to search for solutions for 2020, pushing high school start times back. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, so at this point, if I have not called your name, because there's so many repeats, I was wondering if I haven't called your name, if you could come over here. Did you already sign in? Okay, if you can just come up and say your name, I'm just going to cross you off the list. Okay. Thank you.
Kevin Naughton. I have 2 children at Marion. Oh, sorry. Are all the school board meetings this long? This is my first one, and you have my sympathy if they are. I won't repeat all the anecdotes that others have about their children and the fact that we won't have any together time if the elementary school kids have to go to school so early. I was a project manager for 20 years, and the edict I lived by was keep it simple, stupid. And that overarching edict for my projects meant look at the simplest solution, and that's probably the best. back when, a couple of years ago, I got a survey sent out to me, and one of the choices, which I chose as my personal favorite, was push all the times back a half hour, keep the end time the same, add a week to school. I don't know why it's not being discussed anymore. It seems like the simplest solution. You don't have to worry about changing your bus schedules around, the athletic schedules don't change around. Move everybody back a half hour. If there's a legal requirement for a certain number of hours a school year, add a week to the school year. Many schools, most schools around here, start a week before Labor Day now. I just don't know why that's not being discussed or hasn't been discussed at all since that initial email that went out 2 years ago. So please look at that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Rachel Chow, Bryn Mawr mom of a 6-year-old and 3-year-old, and it is way past my bedtime. So I wanted to really thank the board for soliciting so much community input. I do notice, though, that I think that one community that hasn't been really included is the parents of kids who are 0 to 4. I know a lot of families, maybe like 50 moms in a mom's group that I'm a part of, and nobody had heard about this at all. And everyone moved here for the schools, so I think it's an important group. I'm definitely in favor of creative solutions around busing, homework, as the gentleman said before, adding a week to the school year, and I have an outside-the-box solution for high school students and or middle school students to have a late start time, the same end time, and to have an option for online courses or community service. So I think we can just get really creative and find a way that all the kids can get sleep. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, Michael Gonan. Now, there's another group that, by the way, is not going to be represented here because it's 11:30 p.m. on a weeknight, and that's single parents. And I have a profound question about how single-parent families and 2 working parent families are supposed to be able to maintain their professional lives, which are not luxuries but financial necessities in this country and in this community, when elementary schools are being let out at 2:30. When a high school kid gets out at 2:30, they can go home by themselves. They can get on the bus by themselves. If nobody's home, I was a latchkey kid. When a 6-year-old gets out of Marion Elementary at 2:30, that means either I or my wife needs to be at the school to pick them up. They're not going to be allowed to walk home. People call the cops if that happened. Now, I mean, you're telling parents, and let's be honest, you're predominantly telling mothers that unless their families are wealthy, even by Lower Merion standards, they need and can therefore pay for for additional childcare. They need to just put their professional lives on hold until their kids are bar mitzvah age. That's not acceptable. It's not a way to treat working families and working parents. The parents here have consistently suggested and backed a 2-tier schedule in order to accommodate teenage students' need for sleep, which everybody acknowledges, contrary to the straw manning that we see up here from proponents of the plan, without compromising working families' ability to support their families or young children's needs for sleep. The board's response is, well, we would need more buses, we would need more bus storage, we would need more bus drivers, and we can't get these things. Therefore, there's a Hobson's choice. Someone's kids have to take it in the teeth. And that's simply not true, and it's a dereliction of duty. As I noted at one of the listening sessions, the proposed schedule actually adjusts the gap times between each wave of buses to reflect the fact that the current bus schedule actually isn't being adhered to because of staffing issues for drivers and logistical issues. Trying to smuggle in a solution to that problem onto the timing issue is making the solution to that more critical need harder. The median household income Lower Merion Township is $107,000, more than 40% more than Montgomery County as a whole. If Lower Merion were a county, it would be the 10th richest county in America. If you can't hire and retain drivers, have you tried paying them more? Have you tried recruiting drivers that don't have CDLs and getting them qualified? You need a ballot initiative to raise my taxes to pay for it. I will vote for it. I've got student loans out the wazoo, but I will still pay for it. Every family that is here at 11:30 at night will sacrifice for their children. That is why we are here. This is a community that cares about its kids. That's why why we lived here. My wife went to Marion Elementary. It's why we moved back here. We quit our jobs to come here because this is a community that cares about families. I grew up at Cheltenham. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your
You're
comments.
different, yeah, I think, okay, so we're done on this school start.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you very much to everyone who made comments, many of whom aren't here anymore, and certainly for all of you who are, sticking around here and with us as we're listening to all of these important perspectives. Did you want?
No, I think it's.
Okay. So we appreciate all of the comments, and I know that there's been lots of comments around buses and what more we can be doing with buses, and I know we're exploring some issues around buses, but I think there are some significant constraints, as many people are aware of. At this time, what I had wanted to do was ensure that the public got time to provide feedback with a new recommendation. So we're in a situation where essentially, if I'm going to ask if there are any motions from the board, and I just want to be clear related to start time, because we've now had this public comment, that if there's none, that we'll be accepting Mr. Copeland's recommendation to maintain the current schedule for next year with the idea of making a decision this spring about what the long-term plan will be, but giving time to collect more information, but obviously, but also really importantly, we've been hearing from a lot of parents, particularly elementary age parents, who are talking about how much this proposal, if we are to implement it, will really wreak havoc on people's schedules. And so what we really are trying to do at this point is make sure that whatever change we decide on this spring, that families and the community and teachers, we haven't heard much from teachers, but there's been a lot of discussion around how teacher schedules are going to need to change. We'll give people the opportunity to have a decision made and then plan their schedules around that. So at this time, I'm asking if any board members are looking to make a motion to essentially not move forward in the way in which I just described. Okay, so at this time then, what I'm going to do is to take public comment on action items only. And so what this is I'm now moving into the board meeting, which we have to have. We have to have our business meeting to conduct the actual business. And so I need to give people opportunity who would like to speak on an action item we will be voting for sometime shortly. So if there's anyone else who would like to, please come sign in at this moment. And again, I want to thank everyone and to ask you to please stay engaged as around the start time issue as we come to a decision this spring. So thank you everyone for taking the time.
Dave signed up, so I have Janet.
I'm so sorry, I was waiting for people.
Janet Krafchick,
yes.
Ben Meyer, Tanya Schreiber, and Rebecca Rendell.
And those folks who are signed up to make public comment on action items only, please come up. These are going to be items that are on the regular agenda.
Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
My name is Ben Meyer from Penwyn. That was an interesting discussion, and when a problem is difficult, like it has been at Penwyn, ask more and better questions. And I thought it was very interesting. The board and the public asked some really interesting questions on that topic. It's generally a way to get a constrained problem less constrained, to break the ice. Like Noah, the younger Noah who spoke earlier, I've been coming here since he was in about 6th grade, largely about the green space at Penwyn Elementary. And over the years, hundreds of people have put up signs at Penwyn, come to these meetings, and written in about the Penwyn field. Our group has been a catalyst to encourage a data-driven approach, and your board has took up the challenge, and I think that's, you know, mainly your board, of course, but the third middle school as a result, and it should be a, you know, terrific school with all the efforts and money that you and the community have put into it. Don't forget that there were many naysayers who said that 1860 could not be built, and I'm getting to the Penn Win part, due to technical challenges. And you paid good money for the field space of the new middle school, the 1835 County Line Road. Why? Green space is important for the kids to play at. Just last week, I believe, at the Harriton High School, you represented to Lower Merion Township and got the parking that was going to be on the lacrosse field to be put in reserve. Again, why? Because these field space, these teams are important to the children. Not just at the high school level, not just at the middle school level, but at the elementary school level too. Just like we heard tonight, you know, there's a huge contingent of people in elementary school who are about to have their kids in elementary school. 4 of mine went through Penn Win that care about the elementary school. So we know from your own studies that 20% of Penn Win is hard play space, and compared to Penn Valley, that's 3%. Gladwin is 5%, Belmont Hills is 13%. We don't really need more. So we would encourage, I'm trying to get this quickly, the current green space is also the least per student at Penn Win of elementary schools. Isn't it more likely that in a few years that more studies will show that kids need more recess time than they need more classrooms at Penn Win, especially with the 5th grade leaving? So for the sake of the kids, the community, your budget, I urge you to table the $25,000 for Chester Valley engineers. And if you can't table it tonight, I understand you have commitments too, but to try to put it in reserve and certainly make one of the options to put the parking in the front of the school. You're going to pay them a lot of money, at least have one of the options and ask these difficult questions. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer.
Hi, my name is Tanya Schreiber, and I live in Penn Win, and I'm here to speak about the proposed $25,000 to Chester Valley. A few months ago, Lower Merion School District submitted a proposal to pave over the center of the Penn Win Elementary playground. There was a concern that there was not sufficient blacktop for students to enjoy recess during inclement weather. Yet a deeper analysis shows Penn Win has the highest amount of blacktop per student amongst all 6 elementary schools. Plus, the school has found ways to use the green space even when the grass was damp. This fall field day was actually held despite rain and drizzle, and the kids had a great time with no injuries that I know of. These changes have been delightful for the Penn Win community, as the school has one of the smallest green spaces in the district and one of the largest school populations. Penn Win Elementary is centrally located in our walkable community, and almost any day after school you can see children with their parents mingling on the playground, sharing food, catching up, flying kites, and playing soccer. So the proposal to pave over the center of this space was concerning. During the evaluation of the project, it was discovered a previously overlooked deficiency in the number of parking spots for the current staff and students. This largely eliminated the ability to add any additional play blacktop, as the missing parking spots will absorb most of the remaining allowable impervious surface. We're grateful that you're still revisiting the idea of adding more parking spots, but want to ensure Chester Valley is asked to prioritize the green space on Trent Road. In 2016, there were drafts that utilized the currently unused space on the Haverford Avenue side of the school, and if possible, we would ask that you encourage the planners to revisit those drafts as they create the new ones. There was a previous concern that the Historic Commission would block the use of the Haverford Field, but they have since spoken out to support the preservation of the Trent Play space, even if it means changes to Penn Win's historical facade in the front. They understand the high traffic, high visibility area on the Haverford Field is not as safe of a playground area for the children, so it would be a better location for the adults to park and walk. But ultimately, if a choice must be made between preserving the Trent Road playground and additional parking, we ask that you consider the fact that 5th grade will soon shift to the new middle school, reducing the traffic and parking issues. Lower Merion has submitted a proposal to add classrooms at Harriton, which required additional parking on campus, but they successfully petitioned the township to put that parking in reserve in order to preserve the field. By putting the parking in reserve, the school district promises the space will always remain available for those parking spots if the township determines the parking needs it added at a later date. Administration worked with the township staff, and last week commissioners granted the request. We know you prioritize play space for the children, and that includes a clear understanding of the value of it. I implore you to ensure the engagement letter reflects these values. Please request Chester Valley engineers design the additional parking on the front of the building and preserve the usable field. And for our part, we'll do our best to persuade the township and commissioners to find a solution that provides the best balance of play space and safety for our students coming and going from school. The Penwyn Elementary campus has faced seemingly insurmountable problems, but open lines of communication, research, and creativity has found solutions when they seemed impossible. Let's work together to prove again we can do what's best for our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm sorry? She said thank you for your comments. And then Rebecca?
That's me. I am very sleepy, like most of you. As I said before, I have 4 little ones at home, but I decided to tough it out and stay. Oh, Rebecca Rendell, Wynwood, 4 little kids. But this is something that you can do for the All Kids Need Sleep initiative in whatever form it takes tonight by making the decision not to rubber stamp the $25,000 for this Chester Valley research, by not just assuming the person next to you has thought about it and looked into it, and saving that $25,000 for whatever else. Is it a quarter of a bus? Is it more research for All Kids Need Sleep? It's too much money for the people here tonight to just rubber stamp. And it is just a rubber stamp, and I know that, because anyone who has thought about it knows the good news is we don't need to do anything at Penwyn. Early in the year, there was a proposal to pave over a chunk of the field, but it wasn't done because we don't need to do anything at Penwyn. There is a proposal now to add parking, but I have spoken to the commissioners. I am an attorney. I have done the research myself. I am the one who drafted the FOIA letter that caused the board to find out that they were delinquent 36 spots. And the good news is, as long as no one makes any requests to build anything else at Penwyn, the commissioners have promised me, and I have read it in the law, that nothing needs to be done at Penwyn. No concrete on the field, no parking lot, nothing. Great news, we can save $25,000 tonight. Don't rubber stamp it. Push it off till next time. Talk to me, talk to the Penwyn Civic Association who has spent hours and hours and hours on this. Talk to me as a parent of 2 current and 2 future Penwyn students. Talk to the commissioners. Talk to Rick Churchill, who is my commissioner, who has assured me that if there is no proposal at Penwyn, there is no need to build a single parking space. Let's devote our money and our energy to real serious problems like the sleep thing. And let's not waste $25,000 because, I don't really know the issue, but someone thought we should do it. Please, please, please table it. Please talk to me. Please talk to other people. Talk to other parents. Talk to other attorneys. Let's save this money and save this time and put it where it really needs to go. I am pleading with you. You're up late. I am up late. Here's something we can do tonight that's really good for everyone involved. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So thank you, and I appreciate your comments, but I will absolutely assure you that none of us are rubber stamping the $25,000 for that proposal, and that we may not agree on those issues, but that we're not rubber stamping. So all I'm responding to you is your accusation of us rubber stamping, and I am responding that I assure you we are not doing that.
I apologize. I was not aware of any reason for that to be done.
Okay.
But I totally want to hear it if there is.
I appreciate that. So we have had the public comment on action items only. It is now 11:45, and so I would like to recommend that we move the rest of the meeting onto a consent agenda. We understand, we have, all of us I know have committee reports, lengthy committee reports to go through all of the committee discussions. And at this time, I'm going to suggest that we not read those reports at this time. So I need a motion I first need a motion to move to a consent agenda. Thank you, and I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? The motion passes. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Before we vote on the consent agenda, I would like to ask Mr. Copeland to just briefly explain the Act 34 hearing for the record, please.
Sure. So we had originally set up an Act 34 hearing. Act 34 hearings are a process by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. They're not a board meeting. They're a hearing generally conducted by our solicitor with administration making presentations on building construction projects, specifically the new middle school at 1860. When the architects put the Act 34 booklet together, there was some juxtaposition of documentation and numbers, which we had to correct. So we have to reschedule the Act 34 hearing because there has to be a 30-day window, and so that's what we're doing. We're eliminating the meeting that we had, and we're conducting a new hearing with the corrected materials in the booklet.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Excuse me. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. The consent agenda is passed. At this time, I am opening up to the public who would like to comment on any issue. Obviously, we would appreciate it if folks can sign in. If you haven't had an opportunity to speak, please come sign in if you would like to do so at this time.
I apologize. I don't know what a consent agenda is, and so we were talking about, can you describe that for the public?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm sorry. I think the consent agenda is that we vote on the agenda as one. We put it on consent. So people can decide not to do that. They can ask to pull pieces of the agenda off, points on the agenda, or not. I believe we rarely do it in the school district. I believe the township does it often. But we do it on.
So it would be to uniformly up, down vote all the items that are being.
Unless somebody has requested that an item be pulled out, which no one did. So,
okay.
Yes. So people voted on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that clarification. Is there anyone who would like to speak this evening who has not had an opportunity to do so? Okay. I believe at this time is Amy. Where is Amy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Where are you? I don't. Oh, there you are. Amy, can you please?
Yeah, the Sunshine
Ms.
Act
Brooks,
report.
Yes.
On January 5th, which was a Sunday, the executive session of the board met in a conference call for real estate litigation conversation. And then tonight, January 27th, there was an executive session prior to this meeting regarding collective bargaining and real estate litigation.
Thank you. And our upcoming meeting dates, we have a board meeting on February 10th, an education committee meeting at 8 p.m. And this is important because there's a holiday. Our regular business board meeting will not be on Monday, February 17th, but will rather be on Tuesday, February 18th. And in addition, the following committee meetings will be held in the boardroom at 8:30 a.m. February 4th, curriculum, February 7th, policy, February 13th, facilities and purchasing. And again, I greatly appreciate everybody's time and sticking with us to this late time. And
Before you adjourn, I just wanted to acknowledge that January is Board Member Appreciation Month. I suppose in appreciation,
Okay.
I won't read this blurb that
No.
I had read for you. Just
Don't.
know that you're appreciated. Have a
thank
good
you.
evening.
And with that, we're adjourned.